Chapter 350. Young master, you're not from the western border? The old tea seller frowned and looked at Ling Xiao cautiously. Everyone in the western border knows about this. The Xia dynasty was just a small family in this city 600 years ago. After Emperor Xia Chen ascended to the upper realm at the age of 100, the Xia clan prospered. Now that hundreds of years have passed, Emperor Xia Chen must have become a supreme being. That bastard Xing Qinhuang is afraid of being discovered by the ancient emperor, so he doesn't dare to come here. Ha, I understand. Thank you for telling me. Ling Xiao put down a spiritual stone and walked toward the ancient palace in the city. The reason why the Xia dynasty wasn't exterminated wasn't because Xing Qinhuang was afraid of his evil deeds being exposed. After all, it was 10,000 times harder for people from the upper realm to come down than for people from the lower realm to ascend. If Ling Xiao didn't guess wrong, there must be something wrong with the 9th prince who was born at the right time. The flood dragon swallowed the dragon's luck and became a supreme being? Interesting. However, since he was a destined person, the 9th prince might have some luck here. How could Emperor Xia Chen not leave some protection in the place where he ascended? Of course, the people of the Xia dynasty would never have thought that Emperor Xia Chen, who had become a supreme being in their eyes, would die in the hands of Ling Xiao. In that case, the people in the city who believed in the Xia clan seemed to be his enemies? I beg you, please give my mother-in-law a prescription. She's dying. Boss, I beg you. Just when Ling Xiao and Yi Qinchan were walking along the ancient street towards the central ancient palace, a petite figure was suddenly pushed to the side of the street by someone, and the fall injured her little hand. It was winter now. To cultivators, this kind of cold was not worth mentioning. However, at this moment, the little girl didn't have any spiritual energy fluctuations. She was only wearing a thin cloth. It was white and full of patches, but it was very clean. At this moment, her big eyes were filled with helplessness and fear. Tears flowed down her cheeks and wet her clothes. She looked to be around 11 or 12 years old. Her face was young and tender, but there was an inexplicable sense of determination. She was clearly a young girl with an unfortunate background. In front of him, there were 2 blue-clothed handymen with gloomy faces. They said in a fierce tone, "Get lost, you little beggar. Do you have the money to buy medicine? Your mother-in-law is dying. Your mother-in-law is dying. You should go to the coffin shop. Why did you come to our medicine shop?" Ha 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 ha. Exactly. Without spirit stones to buy medicine, do you think we are Ji Shirtang? Look carefully, this is 1,000 gold workshop. I'm begging you, please prescribe a prescription for my mother-in-law. I'll do anything you want me to do. The little girl ignored the injury on her hand and tightly hugged one of the men's thighs. Her eyes were filled with tears. You can do anything? If you were a little older, you might be of some use, but now? Go and grow up for another 2 years. That man lifted his leg and kicked the girl to the side. From the beginning to the end, Ling Xiao just stood on the street calmly. Even when Yi Qinchan wanted to walk towards the little girl, she was stopped by him. Young master, that little girl is too pitiful. Don't worry, it's not time yet. Ling Xiao shook his head. With this plot, he could already imagine what the next 100 chapters would be. The little girl in front of him had 1,200 points of providence. Although it wasn't much, considering her age, it could be said to be terrifying. At this moment, it was time for a child of destiny to appear and perform a lowly raising. No, a righteous light to shine sing. Moreover, this child of destiny was 90% likely to be a good-for-nothing. Although he had a noble status, he was in dire straits. He would definitely be ridiculed and even beaten up. As such, the little girl was moved. She swore in her heart that she would love her brother well when she grew up. Stop, he's coming. The corner of Ling Xiao's mouth suddenly raised into a playful smile. He turned his head and looked at a young man in white who suddenly rushed over from the end of the street. However, in the next moment, His eyes quietly narrowed. This young man was a good-for-nothing. He didn't have the slightest bit of spiritual power in his body. He was even a little weak. But he didn't have a trace of providence in his body? How could it be? Could it be that my deduction was wrong? For no reason, Ling Zhao's eyes turned cold. He directly kicked the young man who had just run to his side back. Damn, this child of destiny was someone you could save just because you wanted to? The young man in white was in midair, but his eyes were filled with confusion. In this Su Yun city, there was actually someone who dared to make a move on me? Stop. Ling Xiao sighed softly. He lifted his foot and walked to the little girl's side. He reached out and pulled her up from the ground. Where did you come from? The two servants' expressions turned cold. However, when they raised their heads and saw Ling Xiao again, the fierceness on their faces instantly became sluggish. At this time, whether it was Ling Zhao's appearance or the emperor's robe on his body, they all revealed an incomparably noble temperament. In an instant, bright smiles gushed out of their faces. Hee, young master, are you also here to get medicine? The sky is clear and the sun is bright. You actually made a move on a little girl. Is there no law in this Su Yun city? Ling Zhao's face sank. He didn't move at all. The two blue-clothed servants were instantly sent flying backwards. They smashed into the medicine shop and fainted. Little girl, how are you? After doing this, Ling Xiao immediately lowered his head. His gaze was gentle as he looked at the little girl with a dazed face. He raised his hand and wiped away the tears on her face. Young master, I beg you, please help my mother-in-law get some medicine. She is about to die. The little girl suddenly hugged Ling Zhao's arm and cried as she begged. If it was an ordinary trick, her mother-in-law might still be saved. But what she encountered now was a villain. Get medicine? Don't cry first. I am a traveling alchemist. Take me to see your mother-in-law first. Ling Xiao reached out and rubbed the little girl's head. The latter's big eyes instantly bloomed with excitement and surprise. Beat. The destined girl is grateful. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 200 luck points and 2,000 villain points. Children are so easily moved. Really? That's great. Young master, quickly, follow me. The little girl pulled Ling Zhao's hand and turned to run towards the end of the street. Along the way, Ling Xiao also roughly understood that this little girl's name was Ning. She had been relying on her mother-in-law since she was young. She usually did some chores in this Su Yun city. But a few days ago, her mother-in-law suddenly caught a cold and never got out of bed again. However, how could an old lady who could be knocked down by a cold possibly have a grandson who was blessed with providence? This mother-in-law had a story. Ling Xiao nodded and smiled. Holding Ning Er's little hand, he walked into a dilapidated small courtyard in the northern corner of the city. Although it was called a small courtyard, it was actually a dilapidated straw hut with a fence around it. Young master, my mother-in-law is inside. She is my only relative in this world. You must save her. Ning Er's tears did not stop, but Ling Xiao smiled and nodded. I will try my best. You and this sister wait for me outside. I have to check your mother-in-law's body first. Oh, okay, an 11 or 12-year-old little girl who was not scheming to begin with. Now that she had finally grasped the straw to save her life, of course she would unreservedly believe him. Ling Xiao turned his head and glanced at Yi Qinchan. He immediately pushed open the door and walked in. A strong smell of medicine assaulted his nostrils. He saw an old woman lying on the cold stone bed. Her body was covered with tattered clothes and some straw. Damn! How could she not catch a cold? The temperature in this room was even colder than his mother's courtyard. If this old woman had gone out to move around earlier, she might have recovered earlier. But now there was indeed no medicine that could cure her. Her life force had been exhausted. Cough, cough, cough. Ning you're back? Old woman, I am the doctor that Ning invited. I have specially come to send you on your way. Chapter 351. Oh, Dr. Zhong. But we don't have any extra money. Cough cough. The old lady's ears didn't seem to be working well. Until Ling Xiao walked in front of her, a bitter smile appeared on her face. It's all right, Granny. Rather than living in pain, why don't you pass on earlier? Your memories are the most precious treasure to me. Ling Xiao grinned and a flash of soul light flashed across his eyes. The bitter smile on the old lady's face froze before it disappeared. That pair of round eyes was truly a ghastly sight. I see. Ling Xiao stood in front of the bed and looked at the old lady who had lost all signs of life. His lips curled into a sinister smile. He had a feeling that Ning Er's background wasn't simple, but he didn't expect it to be so complicated. As for how complicated it was, her father's name is Ning Tiance. Her mother is the eldest princess of the great Zhou Empire, one of the 8 empires. Do you understand? Interesting. Looks like her father isn't ordinary. How bad can a person who can give birth to such a lucky daughter be? Even if he doesn't have any luck, he's definitely an intimidating presence. Ning Tiance, listen to this. Isn't this name a god of war? Isn't it a shame? It was her heartless mother who was, haha. Until Ling Xiao walked out of the cottage with a sorrowful expression, Ning Er's face showed a tinge of excitement. But it dimmed down quickly. From Ling Xiao's face, she seemed to have guessed something. Her face turned pale. Young master. My granny, sigh. I tried my best, but I dragged it out for too long. If I wasn't worried that you'd be lonely, I'm afraid I'd have died long ago. It's the power of love that made Granny hold on until now. She entrusted you to me, Ning Er. Ling Xiao looked up at the sky. There was an indescribable heaviness in his tone. At this moment, even Yi Qingchan was covering her red lips tightly, and there seemed to be tears in her eyes. She seemed to see an old woman on the verge of death, holding Ling Xiao's hand with tears in her eyes as she entrusted her granddaughter to him. And with Yi Qingchan's understanding of Ling Xiao, he definitely wouldn't refuse. Although Gongzi looked cruel and bloodthirsty, his actions were both righteous and evil. However, only those who truly understood him would know that the young master's heart was incomparably warm. From the beginning to the end, the young master was warm from the inside out. He would not accept any rebuttal. I'll kill whoever refutes me. Then, everyone who was still alive would think that the young master was a warm person. Humph! How could this be? How could this be? How could Granny? Ning Er stood in place, tears falling silently. At this moment, her heart was filled with despair. It was as if the entire world had turned dark in an instant. Although she was only 12 years old, she had suffered hardships with her mother-in-law since she was young. She was much more mature than her peers. But no matter how mature she was still a child. At this moment, she didn't think about how she was going to live in the future. She just wanted to cry and accompany her mother-in-law forever. Granny! Finally, Ning Er's heart began to break down. She cried heartbreakingly. Ling Xiao walked to her side and hugged her tightly in his arms. He gently patted her shoulder. Ning Er, be good. Although Granny is gone, I will take care of you in the future. I will definitely help you find your parents. No. I want Granny, I want Granny. Ning Er didn't hear what Ling Xiao said clearly. She could only cry helplessly. After a long while, she suddenly looked at Ling Xiao with some fear. Gongzi, what did you say just now? Ning Er has parents? Of course, if you don't have parents, did you jump out from a crack in a rock? Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled bitterly. He reached out to wipe the tears on her little face. But Granny said that she picked Ning Er up from the river. She was bragging. Granny already told me about your background. Don't worry, Ning Er, I will take you to find them. A cold light flashed across Ling Xiao's eyes. Yi Qingchan looked at him meaningfully. Every time Gongzi showed this expression, it meant that someone was going to be unlucky. However, These two people who could abandon their own daughter really deserved to die. Gongzi, can I go in and take one last look at Granny? Ning was already exhausted from crying. She nestled softly in Ling Zhao's arms. Don't look. Granny is infected with a very powerful disease. Your body is so weak. Once you are infected, it will be very troublesome. Ling Zhao shook his head and patiently comforted the little girl in his arms. The reason why he came to the western border was naturally not just to play. Now, the western border was in constant war. However, the rule of the 8 empires could be said to be stable. There would not be a big conflict easily. However, if the 8 empires were not in chaos, the remaining small empires could not stir up too much trouble. So, how could he profit from it? Whether it was the immemorial demon blade or the soul-sucking ghost pearl, they were all treasures for killing people and cultivating. With thousands of souls to build my soul palace, with a sea of blood and a mountain of corpses to awaken the demon blade. So, the sacred sect could plot against it. Wah! Hearing Ling Zhao's words, Ning was heartbroken and in pain again. Ling Zhao only passed her to Yi Qinchan when she was exhausted and fell into a deep sleep. Qinchan, bring her to wash up and change her clothes, then wait for her to wake up and eat something. Ling Zhao looked up and glanced at the ancient stone temple in the distance. The corners of his mouth suddenly curled up into a sinister smile. Yes, Gongzi. Yi Qinchan did not ask any more questions. She carried Ning and turned to leave. Ling Zhao just casually flicked his finger. The thatched cottage behind him was instantly set ablaze and burned to the ground. However, just as he lifted his foot and walked towards the ancient temple in the distance, his expression suddenly froze. The young man who appeared on the street just now, could it be that the 9th prince of the great Xia dynasty, whose providence had been devoured? Otherwise, how could he appear at such a perfect time? My kick just now, could it be that I kicked him to death? Then, the hidden good fortune on him. Damn it! I was too careless. If Ling Zhao had not interfered, this plot would probably have gone like this. The 9th prince saved Ning and received her gratitude. She became his childhood sweetheart. Then, by chance, the childhood sweetheart reunited with her parent. This became the opportunity for the 9th prince to rise again. After all, he was the god of war. Even if his cultivation was not the best in the western border, the way he commanded troops and the number of soldiers who followed him must be in the millions. Very suddenly Ling Zhao felt that he was really bad. At the same time, Su Yun City, in the central ancient temple. Chuan, what happened to you? Did you fight with the young master of the Marquis of Shiyuan again? In the ancient temple, a golden-robed middle-aged man who only had one leg and one arm frowned slightly. He took a step forward and instantly appeared beside a white-robed young man in the temple. Then, he reached out and touched the young man's face with heartache. Father, the white-robed young man shook his head. He pursed his lips but did not speak for a long time. Sigh. Chuan, I am useless. The golden-robed middle-aged man was the young man's father. He was the former emperor of the great Xia dynasty and the current emperor of the little Xia dynasty, Xia Yong. Originally, he was also a person who stood at the peak of the western border. However, 15 years ago, he was ambushed and almost lost his life. In the end, if not for the supreme treasure on him, he would have died. Even so, his cultivation fell to the 3rd stage god emperor and did not improve in the past 15 years. Furthermore, if not for the ancient emperor of the Xia clan's arrangements in Su Yun City, that bastard would have long come and exterminated his bloodline. Father, I don't blame you. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame Xia Sheng and his son for their ambitions. They are too sinister. Xia Chuan's small face was filled with resentment. Xia Sheng, Xia Feng, just you wait. One day, I, Xia Chuan, will lead the Xia clan back to the imperial capital and kill you with my own hands. But, there was one thing that had always troubled Xia Chuan and his son. That was How did Xia Sheng and his son know that he would be born on that day? Chapter 352. Sigh. Chuan don't think about other things for now. The evil seal in your body is about to act up again, right? Xia Yong sighed softly and looked at the young man in front of him seriously. Xia Chuan was his 9th son. His first 8 sons had all died when they were born. He had once asked the great heavenly official to divine Great Xia's dragon fate. At that time, the great heavenly official had said that his 9th son had the body of a true dragon and possessed great luck. Sure enough, when Xia Chuan was born, the entire Great Xia imperial palace was shrouded in golden light and the shadow of a dragon vaguely appeared. Celestial music resounded throughout the mountains and rivers. That night, the people of the Great Xia imperial palace knelt in front of the gate and bowed to the sacred shadow of the golden dragon. Everyone believed that the newly born 9th prince would be the next Great Xia imperial palace's chosen one who would ascend to the upper world. Under his leadership, the Great Xia imperial palace would rule the western border and become an eternal hegemony. But no one expected that the next scene would completely stun the entire Great Xia imperial palace. Just as the golden dragon rose to the sky, a black demonic shadow suddenly appeared in the darkness. Although the golden dragon was sacred and terrifying, it was still young and weak. However, the demonic shadow was a black flood dragon that was thousands of feet long. It directly swallowed the golden dragon. Fierce demons began to appear in the world and great demons roared in the distant sky. At that moment, Xia Chuan's aura began to weaken and the celestial music turned into a demonic chant. After the black flood dragon swallowed the golden dragon, it turned into a blood-red light and imprinted itself on Xia Chuan's chest, turning into a scale. Even Xia Chuan's mother died from the evil aura that entered her body. At the same time, outside the imperial palace, rumors were spreading everywhere. They said that the 9th prince was not a true dragon but a demon flood dragon that brought chaos to the world. What he swallowed was the Great Xia imperial palace's dragon fate. This scheme was extremely vicious and insidious. Not only did it confuse the righteous and demonic paths, but it also shut the mouths of the people. Indeed, people began to break into the imperial palace with the excuse of killing the demon. It was laughable that people respected dragons but regarded flood dragons as demons. Therefore, strength was the only way to survive. Everything happened logically as if it was under someone's control. Even the flood dragon's shadow seemed to be waiting in the sky for the birth of the golden dragon. Strange, evil, and unbelievable. Xia Yong had also thought that Xia Sheng and his son had found someone who understood the heavenly laws and deduced everything. But the great heavenly official only shook his head and sighed. If the Shengzhou continent had such an extraordinary person, he would definitely not be used by Xia Sheng and his son. Moreover, when the great heavenly official found out that the 9th prince would be the true dragon of the Great Xia, he had set up a method to conceal his fortune. With the great heavenly official's strength as a 5th-stage god-emperor, not to mention whether there was anyone in the entire western border who could break his technique, even if there was, it was impossible for him to not notice it, but in the end, the great celestial official used his own death to prove his innocence, making the entire matter even more confusing. Yes, Imperial Father, soon. Xia Chuan's eyes flashed with pain. Every time the evil seal acted up, more scales would appear on his body. That kind of torment that was neither human nor demon could be called a nightmare. However, all these years, he had gritted his teeth and persevered. It was all because he was unwilling to give up. He was supposed to be the true dragon of Great Xia, someone who stood at the peak of the world from birth. Glory, splendor, wealth, and rank were not worth mentioning. What he should enjoy the most was the admiration of his people. But now, he was seen as a demon by the world, and the real demon was sitting on the throne. Because of the existence of the blood seal, he could not even cultivate. This kind of humiliation made him feel depressed. resentful. He was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. As for the youth who dared to attack him on the street, Xia Chuan guessed that it was most likely the descendants of the officials who had followed his imperial father here to humiliate him. Now, he had a crippled body, and his imperial father had fallen in cultivation. If not for the fact that this was the ancestral land of the Xia clan and the protection of the ancient emperor, these officials would have rebelled long ago. Even so, he was provoked, beaten, and mocked almost every day. Xia Chuan did not tell his imperial father about this because even if he did, it would be useless. Instead, it would only annoy his imperial father. Back then, the great heavenly official once said that there was only one way to break the blood seal, and that was to inject a terrifying amount of spiritual energy into your body and disperse it. But, Xia Yong sighed. But how could Xia Chuan's ordinary body withstand the spiritual energy filling his body? He would most likely break the blood seal before it could be broken. Therefore, all these years, Emperor Xia could only use a small amount of spiritual energy to prevent the blood seal from spreading. But it was getting harder and harder. The blood-colored blood dragon seal seemed to grow bigger with Xia Chuan's growth. Now, the scales almost covered his entire chest. If this continued, Xia Chuan would really turn into a demon. Spiritual energy infusion. Xia Chuan's face flashed with astonishment, but it turned into determination in the blink of an eye. He naturally understood his imperial father's concerns. Instead of struggling at death's door and eventually being corroded by the blood seal, he might as well give it a try. He was the true dragon of the Xia clan and had been protected by his ancestors since birth. If he had not been plotted against by despicable people, his immortal path would have been smooth. So, he believed that everything before him was just a trial. If he wanted to stand at the peak of the world, he had to be fearless. What was this little bit of risk? Father, I'm willing to give it a try. Xia Chuan suddenly raised his head and looked at his imperial father. His eyes were filled with a kind of awe-inspiring stubbornness. Chuan, have you really thought it through? Xia Yong's expression turned cold, but he finally nodded. That's right, my son, you should have this kind of determination. Instead of living a miserable life, why not give it a try? As the saying goes, wealth comes from danger. Imperial father, I've thought it through. Instead of being seen as a demon and struggling at death's door, why not let me fight to the death for the Xia clan and for the glory of our lineage? The young man nodded and his expression calmed down again. Good. I originally thought, forget it. Since you've decided, I believe that if the heavens knew, ancient Emperor Xia Chen would also protect you. Stop. Who dares to barge into the Xia Imperial Palace? Just as Xia Yong finished speaking, a cold shout came from the distant sky. Following that, countless powerful auras surged and covered the entire sky of the ancient palace. Xia Yong's expression turned serious. Chuan, quick, go to the Xia Ancestral Hall at the back. There's a mechanism in the hall. It's on the green brick under the feet of the Xia Ancestral Hall. You just need to move the brick and you'll enter the ancestral land of the Xia clan. There. Imperial father, remember? An emperor cannot be bound by emotions. Go quickly. You are the only hope for the revival of the Xia clan. After saying that, Xia Yong waved his hand and pushed Xia Chuan towards the back of the palace. He then walked out of the palace. Is he here? Although there was an ancient array set up by ancestor Xia Chen in the ancient palace, but Xia Xing knew this secret too. Since he dared to come here, he must have something to rely on. Inexplicably, Xia Yong's back view suddenly looked bleak. Today, he was going to die. Imperial father, Xia Chuan stood at the end of the palace, clenching his fists. His eyes were filled with tears. Imperial father, don't worry. As long as I survive this calamity, the heavens and earth will crawl under my feet. At that time, I'll use the blood of Xia Xing's lineage as a sacrifice for the glory of the Xia clan. Finally, Xia Chuan gritted his teeth and ran towards the ancestral hall at the back of the palace. Who are you? How dare you barge into the Xia Imperial Palace? Outside the ancient palace, Ling Xiao looked indifferently at the figures with strong auras in front of him. Ask your emperor to come see me. How dare you? Where did this arrogant brat come from? How dare you behave so atrociously in the Xia Palace? Why don't you surrender now? At the head of the group, a god king guard shouted coldly. He held the divine saber in his hand and his aura shot up to the sky. Although he was panicking at the moment, this young man in front of him was not an ordinary person. He must have something to rely on since he dared to come here. But, I'm just a guard. What position do I have? Of course, I have to protect my master. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows and waved his hand. Behind him, two figures in armor appeared out of thin air. One was golden and the other was black. They were both emitting a fierce aura. Chapter 353. Stop! Just as the group of guards was about to attack Ling Xiao, a stern voice suddenly rang out from the ancient hall. Xia Yong's figure could be seen bouncing in front of Ling Xiao and the others. He was really adorable. Who are you? Why did you barge into my sacred palace? At this moment, his eyes were filled with doubt. This young man in front of him did not seem like someone sent by Xia Xing to kill him. But inexplicably, he felt a faint pressure coming from this young man. How could this be? Impudent! Kneel down after seeing this emperor! Ling Zhao's face turned cold. Although he had roughly guessed what was going on, he had no idea what was going to happen. Even though he had guessed what was going on, he still needed to verify some details from this great emperor of the Xia clan. Kneel? Impudent! How dare you humiliate the monarch of my Xia dynasty? Brat, I think you're tired of living. The God King Guard snorted coldly and finally stopped hesitating. Spiritual light flickered around him as he charged toward Ling Xiao furiously. Humiliating the monarch is punishable by 9 exterminations. Even though my Xia clan is in dire straits, how could our dignity be humiliated by a mere 17-year-old? But, at this moment, Ling Zhao's face did not show any signs of nervousness. Instead, he revealed a look of disdain. Then, he casually stretched out a palm. Within it, there seemed to be a dragon talisman shining with a dazzling golden light. Wei Wu, stop! Suddenly, Xia Yong's face was filled with shock, fear, and disbelief. That godly king expert instinctively retracted his attack, but he still landed in front of Ling Xiao. Pucci! Without hesitation, there was no time to react. In the other hand of that young man, a black saber suddenly appeared and ruthlessly pierced into Wei Wu's heart. Wei Wu lowered his head in a daze and looked at the ancient saber that pierced through his body. His face was also filled with disbelief. Damn! Young man, you're not Wang. A strange buzzing sound could be heard as Wei Wu's body instantly withered away. At the same time, that young man's eyes flashed with a bloody light. His soul quietly left his body and mysteriously disappeared. Gulp! The entire Xia palace suddenly fell into a dead silence. Even Xia Yong was looking at the tall figure in white with fear. What a strange technique! What an evil demonic blade! But for some reason, he felt a little excited. Because he recognized that dragon talisman. There was no mistaking that fluctuation. Could it be that my request has received the protection of the gods and reached the ears of the ancestors? You are, grandson, why aren't you kneeling after seeing this ancestor? How dare you offend my majesty? Ling Xiao snorted coldly, a touch of disappointment on his face. Looking at the expression on his face, Xia Yong didn't dare to hesitate any longer and knelt on the ground with a thud. As expected. The 19th generation unfilial descendant of the Xia clan, Xia Yong, greets ancestor Xia Chen. Ancestor, please avenge the Xia clan. Xia Yong's head was filled with anger and grievance, causing cracks to appear on the bluestone floor. There was no mistake. The appearance of this young man in front of him was exactly the same as the ancestor statue enshrined in the ancestral hall. They were both handsome and dignified, cold and arrogant. This is the soul of the Xia clan, where the faith of the Xia clan lies. You may be spared from death, but these mere ants dared to draw their blades against this emperor. They deserve to die. Ling Xiao calmly glanced at the remaining dozen or so guards around him. Among them, there were 2 marquises and 7 generals. They were all the experts in this small Xia palace. They had declined, but no matter how much they declined, they were still nourishment. Kneel down and accept your death. It is your honor to die in the hands of the ancestor. Xia Yong snorted coldly, causing the faces of the 9 guards to be filled with determination. Those who were able to follow Xia Yong here were the most loyal guards. They didn't dare to disobey the orders of the emperor. Even though they still didn't understand how this 17-year-old god general became the ancestor of the Xia clan, but disrespecting the ancestor was a crime worthy of death. Ancestor, please grant us death. Hearing this, Ling Xiao sneered. The black blade in his hand slashed out, reaping their lives in an instant. 1. The Black Soul Palace grew several meters taller. From the beginning to the end, Ling Xiao's eyes didn't have a trace of hesitation. The path to immortality was vast, and it was meant to conquer the world. Moreover, I am a villain. As long as I can strengthen myself, I don't care about anything else. If I'm talking about sins, the hands of all the soldiers in the western border are stained with blood. Therefore, they all have sins. What I want to do is to clean up all the sins in this world and contribute to the peace of this world. Soldiers, rest in peace. When I unify the western border, there will be no more conquest in this world. All of you will be Dao protectors. Ling Xiao, you are righteous. You care about the world. Unknowingly, Ling Xiao was almost moved to tears by his righteous actions. Ancestor! Until Xia Yong's voice came from in front of him, a trace of coldness flashed across his face. Humph! Get up. Ancestor! Grandson is guilty. Xia Yong's eyes were filled with grief and indignation. What crime? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. Here it comes. He originally thought that the dragon talisman alone wouldn't be enough to make Emperor Xia bow down. He didn't expect that he still underestimated the power of faith, especially the name Xia Chen, which had become the mark of the Xia clan. Even though he was only a divine general, in the eyes of the descendants of the Xia clan, he was the god of the 9 heavens. He was the root of the Xia clan's strength. How could a god be offended? Of course, even if Emperor Xia didn't accept it, he wouldn't be afraid. With Xing Shen and Hua Heng's strength, it was easy for them to kill a 3rd-grade divine emperor. Moreover, he had the incarnation of sect Master Taishuan's divine soul in his hands. As a villain, I have to be cautious. With the world as my plan, I must be the one who controls the situation. Ancestor, Yong. Yong has embarrassed you and destroyed the foundation of the Xia clan. Even the other half of the divine talisman that you left behind has fallen into the hands of thieves. Xia Yong lay on the ground and cried bitterly. He didn't get up for a moment. Oh? Who has it fallen into? Originally, Ling Xiao thought that since the Grand Xia dynasty was so powerful, as long as he could logically convince them that he was Xia Chen's soul that had come down to the lower world to train, this ancient dynasty would be his. However, he didn't expect Emperor Xia to be so cowardly as to lose his empire. Damn! Xia Sheng! It's in the hands of my 2nd brother. Xia Yong gritted his teeth and his eyes were filled with resentment. 2nd brother? Biological 2nd brother? A look of surprise flashed across Ling Xiao's face. Then, it turned into a sinister look. That's right. That bastard has the ambition of a wolf. He actually wants to take away our empire. How can this be considered as falling into the hands of thieves? Since they both have the surname Xia, aren't we still family? Before Xia Yong could finish his words, Ling Xiao suddenly shook his head and laughed. Xia Yong's expression turned cold, and he pondered for a long time. Damn! What the ancestor said also seemed to make sense. This empire is still in the hands of the Xia clan. Chapter 354. But Xia Yong was a little confused. Ling Zhao's words made sense, but he still felt that something was amiss. Ancestor, Xia Xing is vicious and merciless. He stole my son's fate with an extremely vicious technique. If not, our Xia clan would have a new great emperor or even a venerable. Oh? Is that so? How could he be so vicious? Come, open your mind and let me see how he stole your son's fate. Ling Zhao's expression turned cold. Even the heavens and earth seemed to be suppressed by thunderclouds. Vaguely, Xia Yong felt that the air was burning, the wind was howling, the lightning was winding, and darkness was descending. The heavens and earth seemed to be on the verge of collapsing under the ancestor's will. Heavenly might. Ancestors' heavenly might. Open my mind? Yes, that's right. How can my words describe the evil deeds of Xia Xing and his son? I must let the ancestor see their evil side with his own eyes. Only then will he believe that Chuan is the only hope for the Xia clan to regain its former glory. But, ancestor, you came down to the mortal realm. My original body felt the change in the fate of the Xia clan and heard your pleas. Therefore, I sent down an incarnation to investigate. I didn't expect that you would steal the fate of your own family. How shameful! Ling Xiao shouted coldly. Tens of thousands of lightning bolts fell from the void above his head, scaring Xia Yong so much that he almost committed suicide out of shame. What would humans do when they were in despair? Of course, they would pray to immortals, Buddhas, and worship their ancestors. Ancestor, you heard it? That's right. Ever since I was chased to the ancestral land, I have been burning incense and praying for you to send down a decree to punish those bastards. Ancestor, come. Check my soul and see if I'm talking nonsense. Xia Yong opened his arms and closed his eyes. He looked like he was hugging the sun in the morning. Ling Xiao smiled indifferently. The soul light in his eyes suddenly shone brightly. He used the soul-sucking ghost pearl to devour Xia Yong's divine soul. Of course, under normal circumstances, no matter how evil this ghost pearl was, it wasn't something that the current Ling Xiao could do if it wanted to swallow the spirit of a god emperor. However, Xia Yong had practically offered his body and soul to Ling Xiao. If she still didn't eat, wouldn't she be letting down his sincerity? Ancestor, what are you doing? Before he died, Xia Yong stared blankly at the blood-red space in front of him. Strangely, he felt that he was really going to die soon. I will personally take back the Xia clan's territory. As for the Xia clan's true dragon, Xia Chen, he's already dead. Therefore, you can all follow me to the underworld. The corner of Ling Zhao's mouth curled up. Xia Yong's soul couldn't refute him in the end. It completely turned into monstrous soul power and cast itself on Ling Zhao's soul palace. Buzz. The ancient black temple once again rose several dozen feet, like a heavenly palace, exuding a sense of supremacy. Second stage God Emperor. Ling Xiao swung his blade and chopped off Xia Yong's head. He kept it in his ring and drank all the blood and flesh before walking towards the depths of the ancient palace. He had witnessed the great change in the Xia palace that day. That black flood dragon swallowing the dragon was truly bizarre. However, he had some guesses about the things that Xia Yong couldn't figure out. In this world, the prophet heavenly official might not be able to predict Xia Chuan's birth or his fate, but there was a type of person who could. However, he didn't know when Xia Feng returned and if he knew some secrets that he shouldn't know. Interesting. He was snatching the fate of others, and so were the children of destiny. However, Xia Feng's methods were truly unfathomable. As for the true Dragon Prince, now that his fate had been swallowed by someone else, What was the point of living? Turning the tables against the wind was too slow. There was no need to go through so much trouble. Be it a true dragon or a false dragon, you can't escape from my palm. You can die in peace. I will avenge you. Ling Xiao smiled indifferently. In a flash, he disappeared from where he stood. At the same time, in the depths of the Xia Palace, in an ancient stone hall, Xia Chuan solemnly bowed to a stone statue enshrined in the hall. Ancestor, today your descendant has entered the ancestral land of the Xia clan. I hope to obtain your protection and break through the blood seal and become a true dragon. Xia Chuan kowtowed again and again. Finally, he walked to the front of the statue and gently touched the green stone beneath its feet. 1. Following a buzzing sound, the space in front of the statue suddenly rippled, and Xia Chuan's figure instantly disappeared from where he stood. Not far away, Ling Xiao unhurriedly walked in from outside the hall. Looking at the figure carved out of limestone in front of him, he nodded slightly. Yes, it's Xia Chen. At this moment, Ling Xiao was not in a hurry to enter the ancestral land of the Xia clan. Instead, he pondered for a moment and summoned Stacked Shadow. Master! Stacked Shadow's aura had reached that of a second-grade divine king. He respectfully bowed to Ling Xiao. Disguise yourself as Emperor Xia and do something. Ling Xiao transmitted his voice to Stacked Shadow through his spiritual consciousness. Stacked Shadow immediately nodded and smiled. Then, he disappeared from the spot. Stacked Shadow should not be exposed. The strongest expert in a small and broken dynasty was only a second or third-grade divine emperor. Even if she was exposed, ordinary divine emperors would not be able to stop her if she wanted to leave. It should be about time. Calculating the time, Xia Chuan had already been in there for an hour. Since this secret realm was left behind by Xia Chen for his descendants, he would naturally have some backup plans to prevent others from snatching it away. Bloodline activation was the most common. Although Ling Xiao had the dragon talisman, he was not a true disciple of the Xia clan. As for the ninth prince, he was probably the animal that was used as a blood sacrifice to activate the secret realm. 1. Ling Xiao pressed his palm down, causing the space to ripple again. His figure also disappeared from where he stood. At this moment, what appeared in front of Ling Xiao was a verdant valley. The spiritual energy in the valley was dense and terrifying. Spiritual herbs and flowers could be seen everywhere. It felt like an otherworldly place. From Xia Yong's memories, Ling Xiao already knew that this secret realm was the place where Xia Chen had attained his Tao. It was said that an ancient dragon vein was sealed within, which was the foundation of the Xia clan. Of course, once such a terrifying creation appeared, it would inevitably lead to countless dispute. Therefore, this secret was only known by the successive divine emperors of the great Xia dynasty. Now that Xia Yong and his son had been driven out of the imperial capital, they had no choice but to place all their hopes on this ancient dragon vein. As expected, at the end of his line of sight, a white-robed figure sat quietly with an evil light flickering in front of his chest. Behind him, a golden dragon's silhouette gradually wriggled out. It was actually completely formed by spiritual energy. Even Ling Xiao felt a wave of shock from the vast and boundless spiritual energy fluctuations. As expected of an ancient dragon vein, this one was far more terrifying than the one in the Yuanyu Holy Land. Back then, Xia Chen was able to ascend not because he did not want to take it away, but because he did not have the strength to do so. And with Ling Xiao's methods, it would not be an easy task to capture him. However, Xia Chuan was the true dragon of the Xia clan. Even if his luck had been taken away by evil techniques, he was set to be the destined person in this era of great battles. The predicament in front of him might just be a kind of tribulation. Or it could be said that the arrangement of the heavenly Tao was to pave the way for him to come here and fuse with the ancient dragon vein. Otherwise, why would he take the risk of being blown up by the ancient dragon vein and do such a dangerous thing when he had a smooth journey, sat on the throne and conquered the western border to obtain the supreme title. Believe me, the higher one stands, the more worries one will have. Only when one has nothing will he have no worries. Therefore, he could probably fuse with the ancient dragon vein smoothly into his body through dangerous twists and turns. But in this way, wouldn't he become the best vessel? Could this be the so-called prosperity of everything? It is difficult to capture a dragon, but it is easy for me to capture you. Chapter 355. Ancestor, protect your descendants. Xia Chuan roared at the sky. He did not see the figure hiding in the void with divine light covering all of his aura. At this moment, Ling Xiao also noticed that the golden dragon seemed to be wrapped in chains. It was obviously sealed here. Moreover, looking at the confusion in its eyes, it did not seem to be very smart. Has its intelligence been sealed? This Xia Chen is really something. Ling Xiao smiled faintly. These ascended people were indeed cunning. Actually, what they cared about was the safety of their descendants. What a joke! What they cared about was the faith of their descendant. The power of faith was extremely mysterious. Now that he was in the lower world, Ling Xiao couldn't sense it. However, back then, when Taoists and Buddhists fought, it was said that they were fighting for the providence of heaven and earth. In the end, they were fighting for the faith of the people of the world. Therefore, Ling Xiao guessed that the so-called power of faith would probably affect one's providence. The more faith one had, the more providence one would have. Some people even said that the heavenly Tao was born from this. It evolved its intelligence to protect the children of destiny who believed in it. For a villain like Ling Xiao, naturally, the heavens would not accept it and would pierce through the clouds. Therefore, he would be marked by the heavenly Tao and killed by the children of destiny. Buzz. In the mystic realm, the spiritual wind began to howl, and the world suddenly became clear. Dazzling spiritual light began to blossom around Xia Chuan's body, and his face almost instantly twisted. On his skin, blood seeped out and rushed toward the dragon's shadow above his head. As for the chains that wrapped around the ancient dragon vein, they suddenly emitted boundless divine light and gradually loosened and dissipated. This is Xia Chen's backup plan, right? Only the descendants of the Xia family can remove the seal to be recognized by this ancient vein. A trace of mockery flashed in Ling Xiao's eyes. He was afraid that even if he killed Xia Chuan and forcefully captured this dragon vein, he might not be able to take it away from this place. The children of destiny naturally had to have their own unique opportunities. Otherwise, do you think I don't want to kill these cute children one by one? Childish. Ah! Finally, when the chains completely disappeared, the dragon vein in the air suddenly bent down and turned into a golden light that poured into Xia Chuan's head. F***ck. Even with Ling Xiao's temperament, he could not help but sigh inwardly. The Son of Heaven's mandate was really not human. A mere mortal body was actually able to withstand such terrifying spiritual pressure. If it were an ordinary side character, even if it was a divine king powerhouse, they would probably explode instantly. What did all these inexplicable phenomena mean? Was it luck? But he didn't have any luck left. True dragons were born with the protection of the heavens and earth. Even though his fate had been snatched away, he was still the body of destiny. For example, when Lin Shi went to the Fire Clan to get the fire, he had clearly lost his providence, but he still managed to obtain it. That was because some instance dungeons were tailor-made for him. Luck was lost later on, but the instance dungeon was prepared at the beginning. Ah! Xia Chuan's pained howls rang out unceasingly. Countless cracks appeared on his body as his meridians exploded. He looked like a bloody corpse, a ghastly sight to behold. F***ck. This F***king hurts just by looking at it. Ling Xiao sucked in a breath of cold air. Indeed, it was not easy to be the Son of Heaven's mandate. Only by being abused, beaten, and ridiculed time and time again would one be able to become the ruler of the world. If that was the case, Why not die earlier and reincarnate earlier? Otherwise, if you met someone with a higher providence than you would become someone else's stepping stone at any moment. Judging from Ling Tian's providence, he was probably the strongest son of heaven's mandate model in this world. Therefore, whoever Xiaochuan was, he would either die on the way to attaining his Tao or become Ling Tian's servant. But he was born as a human, how could he become a servant? Why not reincarnate and try his luck again? Time passed slowly, and a full 4 hours later, the spiritual light around Xiaochuan's body still did not dissipate. If not for the fact that there was still a trace of vitality in his body, Ling Xiao would have thought that this guy had died from overeating. Right at this moment, a black serpent's shadow suddenly shot up from his chest and bit down fiercely at him, as if it wanted to completely destroy him. Ling Xiao narrowed his eyes, and the soul-sucking ghost pearl suddenly flashed with scarlet light like a falling star, instantly enveloping that wisp of evil aura. Roar! The angry and unwilling roar instantly resounded throughout the entire mystic realm. Then everything returned to normal. A soul seal might contain endless danger to Xiaochuan, but to Ling Xiao it was not worth mentioning at all. But at this moment, Xiaochuan was unaware and still had his eyes closed. There seemed to be a dragon's shadow outside his body, and the injuries on his body were rapidly healing at an unbelievable speed. Even his cultivation was crazily breaking through at this moment, only stopping when he reached the mystic clear stage. In his Dan Si, the shadow of a dragon quietly meandered, revealing endless divine power. The true dragon's sacred body was formed in a day. 1,000 providences appeared again. The thunderclouds in the sky began to surge, but Ling Xiao's lips curled up into a smile. Then, his eyes narrowed, and the scene in front of him changed instantly. At the same time, in the center of the western border, in a magnificent golden palace, a figure who was sitting cross-legged suddenly opened his eyes, and a strong sense of surprise flashed across his face. Damn it! The black dragon blood seal is broken. Could it be? Humph! Xiaochuan, so what if you have broken the soul seal? Now, your providence has been completely taken away by me. I am the true destined person of this world. You are destined to be just a stepping stone for me to reach the peak of this world. But, there is another possibility. That Xiaochuan is probably dead? Men, pass down my order. Send the shadow guards to Suyun City to investigate the whereabouts of Xia Yong and his son. In the magnificent ancient palace, a young man in a black python robe suddenly stood up and looked out of the palace with a cold expression. At this moment, although his face was a little pale, he was still calm and indifferent. Even, vaguely, there was a sense of vicissitude. How could a young man in his early 20s have such an aura of vicissitudes? In the realm, Ling Xiao looked indifferently at the figure of the young man under him, and there was a trace of a smile in his eyes. Ha 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 ha! I did it! I did it! I, Xiaochuan, have finally broken the blood seal and become a true dragon. Xiaofeng, Xiaxing, just you wait. Give me another 10 years, and when I become an emperor god, I will definitely kill you with my own hands. Xiaochuan laughed crazily, and there was a kind of joy and excitement in his eyes. However, the moment he stopped laughing, his expression became inexplicably serious. At this moment, he seemed to see that the place in front of him did not seem to be the ancestral land of Xia ancestor. It seemed to be a brand new world, and there was a strong fluctuation of spiritual energy in the desolation. What the hell? Is this another opportunity that ancestor left for me? Yes, it must be so. First, I have to obtain the dragon vein, ancestor's approval, and then I have to activate the hidden opportunity. This is my path, this is my path. Ancestor, your wisdom is unparalleled, and your wealth is boundless. Your descendants are indebted to you. Chuan, in this life, is willing to die for you. Chapter 356. achieving the true dragon's sacred body and triggering a new opportunity. Ancestor, you've treated me well. I'll kowtow to you. Xia Chuan was excited, especially since this place was so boundless that it seemed like an ancient ruin. Even the scorching sun above his head seemed to contain the spiritual power of a supreme treasure. This was a treasure land. My Xia Chuan's path to immortality is finally beginning to open up. 30 years in the east, 30 years in the west. I didn't expect to swim to the other side in 15 years. I, Xia Chuan, am indeed a true dragon. I swam really fast. Ancestor, please. Your descendant Xia Chuan is here to thank you for your protection. Don't worry, when I become a god emperor, I'll definitely take back everything you've given to my Xia clan. Xia Chuan kowtowed and prayed sincerely. No need, I plan to take it back myself. However, just as he finished speaking, a deep and powerful voice suddenly resounded in the void. However, the moment he raised his head in a daze, he saw a silver palm that contained unparalleled lightning energy suddenly pressing down from the sky and grasping his entire body in the palm. Puchi! How could a mere Xianqing cultivator resist the complete lightning law? Before the spiritual light around Xia Chuan's body surged, he was lifted into the air like a dead dog. Blood instantly sprayed out from his mouth. Even the aura in his body, which had just recovered, instantly withered. Who are you? Why did you capture me? Xia Chuan's eyes were filled with fear, especially when he saw the handsome face that had appeared in front of him. Shock surged onto his face. Looking at this young man's age, he was probably not much older than him. But in front of him, he didn't have the slightest ability to resist. Why are you so outstanding when you're both young? Wait, why does this face look so familiar? It's him. It's the young man who kicked me away on the street. Today, in Suyan City, he was kicked away by Ling Xiao and didn't even take a good look at the latter's appearance. But now, seeing the evil smile on his face, Xia Chuan suddenly felt a bone-piercing chill. Beep, the child of destiny's Tao heart trembles. Congratulations to the host for plundering 500 luck points and 5,000 villain points. What are you doing? Let me go. I am the 9th prince of the Xia dynasty. If you dare to kill me, my father will not let you go. The 9th prince of the Xia dynasty? Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. Your father is waiting for you in the underworld. As soon as he finished speaking, Ling Xiao waved his hand again, forming a seal out of thin air, uprooting a huge mountain under his feet, and then Xia Chuan's face was filled with horror as he felt himself flying out again. Boom! Xia Chuan's figure smashed down, landing right at the base of the mountain. The intense pain all over his body almost caused him to faint. However, before he could stand up, he saw a shadow looming over his head. The huge mountain that had been uprooted came crashing down from the sky. No! I can't die. Beat! The Chosen One's Tao heart has been shattered. Congratulations to the host for plundering 500 luck points and 5,000 villain points. Qi, even with Xia Chuan's true dragon physique, how could he possibly withstand the grand momentum of that mountain? A true dragon of a generation had finally turned into a pile of mud at the bottom of the mountain. However, with Xia Chuan's death, the ancient dragon's vein that he had fused with his Dan Si regained its freedom. Buzz! A loud and clear dragon roar resounded through the sky. Endless surging spiritual energy instantly surged throughout the entire realm, and the ancient dragon's vein directly turned into a golden light and drilled into the mountain, no longer emitting a trace of aura. Vegetation began to grow on the mountain peak, and immortal flowers began to bloom. Between heaven and earth, spiritual energy turned into wind, sweeping in all directions. The originally desolate realm finally bloomed with vitality after fusing with two dragons' veins. The spiritual energy contained in the dragon's vein would indeed be exhausted at a time, but as long as the Tao laws were born in this world and the power of the world was derived, Ling Zhao's goal would be achieved. As for what would happen if the dragon's vein was exhausted? F***ck. What can I do? Of course, I have to dig a few more. Ling Xiao looked at the end of this world with clear eyes. There, a wisp of purple energy finally evolved into auspicious clouds. The sun and moon shone brightly, complementing each other. Heaven and earth began to clear up, and the wind blew past the mountain peak. Ha! Do you think I'm going to use Ning to deal with Xiachuan? What a joke. That's my sister. Her background is pitiful. If I use her again, am I a beast? What? It's too easy to kill him? What's so fun about a son of destiny whose luck has been taken away? Let him grow? Do you know how long it will take for him to grow? I'm afraid I'll forget about him in the blink of an eye. Wouldn't that be awkward? So, let's move on to the next one. At the same time, in Suyun City, experts from the aristocratic families suddenly walked out. Their gazes were either puzzled or excited as they gathered at the central ancient palace. Xia Yong sat in the imperial court, looking at the dozens of youths standing below the palace, as well as the important officials of the dynasty beside them. His gaze was dignified, and his aura shook the heavens. Today, I'll open the ancestral land of the Xia clan and choose a few outstanding geniuses to follow the ninth prince to gain experience there. At this moment, although Xia Yong's voice was calm, when it landed in the ears of the officials, it carried a hint of shock. What? Open the ancestral land of the Xia clan? This is a great opportunity. I wonder which clan's disciple will have this honor. Countless experts' faces were filled with excitement and anticipation. Everyone knew that this ancient palace was left behind by the ancestor of the Xia clan who had ascended to the upper world. In other words, the opportunity he left behind would definitely be world-shaking. Originally, the Xia clan would not share such an immortal's inheritance with others. But when they thought of the ninth prince's useless nature, they suddenly understood. The emperor's action was probably to borrow the strength of these geniuses to help the ninth prince obtain the ancestor's inheritance. However, in that case, wouldn't it be a form of training for them? They might not be able to eat the meat, but wouldn't the soup be delicious? You follow me. I'll personally bring you there. The stacked film swept across the dozens of youths standing below the palace, and finally chose the 20 with the strongest cultivation among them and walked towards the depths of the ancient palace. Behind him, the geniuses and experts who were not chosen looked disappointed. Great! My Li clan will prosper. Congratulations, Lord Wang. Your grandson has such an experience. Even if he doesn't obtain the opportunity, he'll have the merit of protecting the dragon. In the future, the Wang clan will definitely be valued by the emperor. Hearing the discussions behind him, Xia Yong's face was filled with ridicule. Until in the depths of the ancient palace, an earth-shattering sound suddenly rang out. The courtiers who had been patiently waiting in the main hall suddenly froze and rushed towards the direction of the sound. At this moment, the ancestral hall, which had always been regarded as a forbidden area by the Xia clan, had turned into ruins. A faint smell of blood permeated the air, causing fear to appear on many people's faces. The ancestral land of the Xia clan exploded? The emperor and the others. Could it be? Countless guesses spread out in an instant. Some said that Emperor Xia, the ninth prince, and the 20 geniuses had angered the ancestor of the Xia clan and caused the ancestral land to collapse. Others said that the ancestral land was originally filled with danger, and that the group's trip here boded ill rather than well. After all, the fate of the Xia clan had come to an end. In the realm, Ling Xiao looked calmly at the 20 geniuses of the Xia clan in front of him and nodded slightly. Not bad. Among the 20 geniuses, 3 of them had fate. Although there were only 100 or 200 of them, it was still an unexpected surprise. Where is this place? I wonder, who is this young man in front of us? I don't know, but he looks quite powerful. He will become your master, Xia Yong said with a smile. The corners of Xia Yong's mouth suddenly curled up into a cold smile. Open your mind, and you'll be able to obtain great fortune. Open your mind. Although many geniuses were hesitant at this moment, the Emperor's words did not allow them to question. They immediately opened their minds as instructed. At this moment, a soul light flashed in Ling Zhao's eyes, and the faces of the 3 geniuses of the Xia clan who had fate on them suddenly froze. The remaining 17 geniuses fell limp to the ground, and there was no longer any trace of life in them. I'll leave these 3 to you. Teach them some assassination technique. With that, Ling Zhao's figure instantly disappeared. If he could train a group of death warriors who all had fate on them and scatter them all over the Xingzhou continent to develop, just thinking about it made him a little excited. Chapter 357. Sister Qinchan, do you think what the young master said is true? Ning really has parents? In a lively restaurant in Suyun City, Yi Qinchan gently looked at the little girl in front of her and gently nodded. If the young master says there is, then there is naturally. Ning you don't have to think too much. The young master will definitely do what he promised you. Oh, Sister Qinchan, aren't you eating? The food here is delicious. Ning face was a little haggard, but compared to before, she was like a different person. Her delicate little face was as white as jade, and her soft black hair was tied into 2 goat horns, which made her look quite playful. She was no longer wearing a thin cloth robe, but a red cashmere coat, which made her look very festive. Although she was still young, Ning appearance was quite lively. She was like a pool of clear water, quiet and indifferent, and had a natural temperament of ice and jade. I'm not eating. Eat slowly. If it's not enough, we can order more. Yi Qinchan's beautiful eyes curved into a crescent moon. She held her cheeks and looked at the little girl in front of her seriously. Her mother had passed away when she was young. Although her father's love was as heavy as a mountain, it still lacked a trace of meticulousness and gentleness. However, this little girl in front of her was abandoned by her parents when she was born. This made Yi Qinchan have an indescribable complicated feeling in her heart. Sister Qinchan, if Ning has parents, then why don't they want Ning? Did Ning do something wrong? Suddenly, Ning tears fell again. How could it be? Ning is so cute, how could she do something wrong? I think they must have some difficulties. Before Yi Qinchan could say anything, a gentle laugh suddenly came from behind the 2 of them. Ling Zhao's figure came from the side and gently rubbed Ning little head. Young master! Ning immediately stood up from her seat with a reserved look on her face. Don't call me young master. Call me brother Ling Xiao in the future. Wow, Ning looks so cute after changing clothes. Ling Xiao nodded at Yi Qinchan, and the latter's lips curled into a smile. Young master, if we can have a child, it must be a very happy thing, right? I have to work hard, big brother. Ling Xiao? Ning little face flashed with surprise. Inexplicably, her fear of Ling Xiao seemed to have lessened a lot. Brother was such a heartwarming title. The destined daughter is grateful and has complete trust in you. Congratulations, host, for obtaining 500 luck points and 5,000 villain points. Hurry up and eat. After you're done, we'll go and meet those 2 parents of yours. Ling Xiao smiled faintly and called for the waiter to order a bottle of sake. Big brother Ling Xiao. If I can't find my parents, then Ning don't worry. If we can't find them, just follow me and big sister Qinchan. Ling Xiao sipped a mouthful of wine, a smile flickering in his eyes. In the future, my 9 younger sisters will all be peerless geniuses? Yes, I have to work hard too. Really? Can I really follow you and elder sister Qinchan? Ning seemed very excited. After all, her background was too pitiful. However, being the destined daughter, it was a standard routine. If it wasn't for a dead father or a dead mother, she would be alone and abandoned. It wasn't easy for someone to care about her. Naturally, she would be moved to tears. This was the so-called childhood sweetheart series, the self-cultivation of a childhood sweetheart. Ling Xiao smiled and nodded. I'm full. Let's hurry up. The Great Zhou dynasty is still a bit far from here. And, Big Brother, I'm full. The three of them held hands and walked out of the restaurant. Young Master, was there a loud explosion in the city just now? Oh, maybe someone cultivated too much and blew themselves up. Ling Xiao smiled indifferently. The 9 dragons' golden carriage under his feet soared into the sky, carrying Yi Qinchan and the other 2 into the distance. Wow! It's a dragon! Big Sister Qinchan is actually a true dragon. Wow, we're flying, we're flying! Ning Er's face was filled with shock and joy. Her mood seemed to gradually improve because of the novelty in front of her. In the imperial palace of the Great Xia dynasty, a middle-aged man in a golden dragon robe looked at the young man in front of him in surprise. Feng, you're saying that Xia Yong rashly opened the ancestral land and died inside? That's what the Shadow Guard said. It said that all the officials of the Great Xia dynasty were present at the scene. I guess that Xia Yong wanted to borrow the divine power of the ancestor to remove the black dragon blood seal on that trash Xiachuan. He even specially selected a group of geniuses to follow him. In the end, Xia Feng's eyes flashed with a cold smile. It said that the entire ancestral land exploded. Blood flowed like a sea and broken limbs were everywhere. Even the statue of the ancestor collapsed. Ha 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 ha! The heavens are really protecting our bloodline. It seems that the ancestor also knows that Xia Yong and his son's luck has run out. This is a good thing, a good thing. Let's have a big banquet. Pass down my order. The whole country will celebrate together. Let's start the banquet and congratulate the late emperor on his death. Xia Xing looked up to the sky and laughed, his face full of pride. Originally, he was worried in his heart. Although Xia Feng's methods were sinister and his plan was meticulous, it was said that the ancestral land of the Xia clan had the fortune left behind by the ancestor. The reverence for Xia Chen had long been deeply ingrained in the hearts of the descendants of the Xia clan. To be able to ascend to the upper world as an emperor god, this ancestor of the Xia clan must have been a heavenly talent. And the methods he left behind were really unsettling. But now everything was over. Xia Yong and the 9th prince died in the ancestral land together. His bloodline was the fate of the Xia clan. Even the old people in the imperial court who still had hope in their hearts could only obediently obey. Wonderful! The heavens are really helping me. Ancestor Xiachen, I will kowtow to you first. Haha, imperial father, have you considered my request? Xia Feng's eyes suddenly flashed with coldness. Of course, he did not care about Xiachuan. Even if he was the true dragon of the Xia dynasty, he was only a child in his teens. In terms of methods and temperament, how could he be compared to Xia Feng? What he really cared about was the immortal secret realm in the center of the western border. In the western border, there were 8 dynasties and 1 palace. Since this palace could establish itself in this war-torn land, one could imagine how terrifying its foundation was. It was said that the Cold Moon Immortal Palace cultivated the Yin Moon Tao. They could cultivate when they saw the moon. And the ancestor of this palace had ascended to the upper world, leaving behind a supreme immortal technique and a secret to becoming an immortal. This secret was hidden in the Immortal Palace's secret realm. But after so many years, there was no news of anyone ascending to the upper world. So, this secret was probably still there. Ah, haha, Feng, today is the day of the celebration. We can talk about other things later. A gloomy look flashed in Xia Xing's eyes. Then, he shook his head and laughed. He did not give Xia Feng a chance to speak again and directly walked out of the palace. Xia Feng was his eldest son, but he had 3 other sons. And Xia Feng's mother was just a concubine who had died a long time ago. So, the great Xia dynasty had never established the position of crown prince. After all, the empress still had 2 sons. More importantly, about 20 years ago, on the day Xia Feng's mother passed away, he felt that his eldest son had suddenly changed. He became sinister, terrifying, and meticulous. Even when it came to plotting for Xia Chuan's fate, he had a vague feeling that it was as if Xia Feng already knew what was going to happen. This feeling was very real, but also somewhat inconceivable. But it just so happened that his prophecy came true. Suddenly, Xia Xing felt a chill in his heart. He was able to obtain his current status because of Xia Feng's schemes. But the crown prince that Xia Xing wanted was a crown prince that he could completely control, and not someone who could control him. Chapter 358. When Xia Xing walked out of the main hall, Xia Feng's eyes flashed with coldness. How could this be? Xia Yong and his son should not have died in the Mystery Land, especially Xia Chuan. He should have a relationship with the daughter of the great Zhou War god. Could it be because I seized his karmic luck and changed his fate? Humph. My dear imperial father, do you think that you can still suppress me like before? Empress, second brother, third brother, what can you do to me now? As long as I can marry the granddaughter of the imperial advisor, you will have to give me the position of crown prince. Then I will be able to establish my own power. When that time comes, the immortal palace relic. Father, I will let you sit on the throne for a few more years until I get the fortune from the immortals. When that time comes, if I remember correctly, the immortals will appear in a year. I have been lying low for so long, it is time for me to stand up. A year. Why don't I take Qiao Shuang to the Broken Tablet Mountains for a walk and get the fortune from the relic? In the end, Xia Feng smiled coldly and walked out of the main hall. The great Xia dynasty, or rather Xia Xing, had the support of 3 people to sit on the throne. One was the former Zhenyuan general of the great Xia dynasty, the current Zhenyuan Count Zhongyi Sikongyu. The other was the imperial advisor Qiao Yunli. The last was Xia Feng's third uncle Xia Zeshan, the Prince of Yong. His cultivation was not high, but his influence was great. The 3 of them were the backbone of the great Xia dynasty and the pillars that the emperor relied on to suppress the important officials in the imperial court. Zhenyuan Count had a son who was a playboy. 3 years ago, he went to the border to train. His name was Sikong Hui and he was close friends with Xia Feng. The granddaughter of the imperial advisor, Qiao Shuang, was the most beautiful woman in the great Xia dynasty and Xia Feng's fiancé. As for Xia Zeshan, he had a son named Tian. He was domineering and did not care about anyone. As long as he could use 2 of the 3, the great Xia dynasty would be in his hands. Then, he would give Qiao Shuang a fortune and show his generosity as her fiancé. Then, he would not have to worry about the beauty not being moved. Haha, in this life, I want the western border to be in my hands. No! I want to trample the world under my feet. As for the enemy who killed him, haha, don't be anxious. Wait for me to hide for another year, then I will personally expose your true face. Young master, where are we going now? Yi Qingchan looked curiously at the glorious ancient city below, her tone a little surprised. For 3 whole days, the 3 of them had been walking in the wilderness without stopping for even a moment. And now, the ancient city before them was heavily guarded. With a single glance, they could tell that it was no ordinary place. However, now, the 3 of them were in the western border, and not the eastern border. No matter how many tricks Ling Xiao had up his sleeves, he was only in the divine general realm. Yi Qingchan was a little worried that they would barge into the imperial capital of a dynasty so rashly. After all, with this young master's temperament, he had always been unscrupulous. If he caused any trouble, the capital of the great Zhou Empire, Yunfang City. Ling Xiao smiled faintly and turned to look at Yi Qingchan. Qingchan, take Ning to the heavenly palace to rest for a few days. I have something to do in the city. These few days, It was not that Ling Xiao did not want the two of them to rest in the realm. But Ning Er had just sat in the dragon carriage, and her eyes were full of surprise. She was unwilling to leave no matter what. Young master, Yi Qinchan was a little worried. After all, Ling Xiao was too stubborn and arrogant. With her around, she could take care of him more. Although her cultivation level was not as high as Ling Xiao's, but in the face of death, she had an incredible trump card. Don't worry, I know what to do. Ling Xiao smiled faintly and kept the two of them in the realm. He lifted his feet and walked towards the ancient city of Yunfang. The Great Zhou Empire was one of the 8 great empires. Its foundation was terrifying. At this moment, the walls of this majestic city were 1,000 feet tall and pierced through the clouds, revealing a supreme majesty. And at this moment, in front of the city gate, there were dozens of armored guards holding long spears, waiting for battle. In the ancient city, there were countless powerful auras surging through the heavens and the earth, intimidating all evil. One of them had reached the 6th stage Divine Emperor realm. And these were only the strong cultivators on the surface of the Great Zhou Empire. Who knew how many more strong cultivators were hidden in the palace? Indeed, there were many strong cultivators in the land of conquest. Although the eastern border was full of sects, there had been no war for almost 100 years. But the western border was different. The 8 great empires stood in the center of the western border and occupied the rivers and plains with the densest spiritual energy. But the remaining empires were in chaos all year round to divide the spiritual veins and cities. In the end, there were many empires behind them. In the war between the empires, the unlucky ones were the small vassal empires. Ling Xiao stepped into the ancient city and looked at the endless stream of people on the street. Compared to the capital of the Great Zhou Empire, Suyun City was small. On both sides of the ancient road, there were many palaces and tall buildings. From time to time, there were cultivators with powerful auras passing by, their faces full of arrogance. Until Ling Xiao's footsteps stopped in front of an ancient building covered with red silk, the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Spring Full House. In the capital of any empire, there would be many places like this. People would only want to try different things when they were full and stood tall. The women in this brothel came in contact with people from all walks of life. If he wanted to know the news in this city quickly, a tea house or a brothel was the most suitable place. Of course, for Ling Xiao, a brothel was the most suitable place. A tea house, killing people was always more obvious. But a brothel, once the small door was closed and the small curtain was drawn, even if you screamed until your throat was broken, others would think that you were cheering happily. Hey, young master, come in and play. We have a new batch of girls here. They are all good people. Young master, if you don't like them, we have girls from other demon clans. Do you like the spiritual cat clan? You don't like them? Don't worry, we also have the Jade Snake clan. In front of Spring Full House, a few gorgeously dressed young women shook the silk in their hands and smiled charmingly at Ling Xiao. At this moment, there seemed to be a divine mist rising from the latter's face, covering his appearance. But the noble aura emitted from his body was clear at a glance. How old are the ladies of your Spring Full House? Ning Er was 12 years old this year. In other words, she should have been abandoned by Ning Tiance and Zhou Minyao 12 years ago. A girl who was too young might not know that secret. Young master, we have girls of all ages here, from 14 to 15 years old to 30 years old. What kind of girls do you like? Why don't I pick a few for you? A fat old woman with a fierce face walked out from the building. She was about 100 years old and her cultivation had reached the Paong realm. I think you are not bad. The entire Spring Full House suddenly fell into a dead silence. Everyone was dumbfounded as they looked at the tall young man standing in the middle of the hall. After a while, they swallowed their saliva. Young master, are you making fun of me? The old woman's expression was dull, and there was even a hint of shyness in her eyes. You don't want to? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly, but the old woman had already lowered her head with a red face and said softly, "Old cough cough, of course I am willing. Young master, I am willing to give you spiritual stones." Chapter 359. When Ling Xiao walked out of the spring-full brothel, the ladies at the door were shocked. Not only did he have a unique taste, but he also seemed to be in poor health. He had only been in there for half an hour and he had already come out? What a silver spear! His good looks were indeed pleasing to the eye, but after the candle was extinguished, haha. Ling Xiao walked on the street and the glow on his face disappeared. Suddenly, a scream came from the brothel behind him. "Ah! Someone is dead! Sister Hua is dead!" The Jiangyu Inn was an ordinary inn in the north of Yunfang City. Although it was called an inn, it was actually a cottage with a few old wooden tables. The owner was an old man in his 50s. He did not have any cultivation, so his face was full of the scars of time. Ling Xiao sat at the corner of the cottage and ordered a plate of beef and a pot of hot wine. He drank alone. He was waiting for someone. Or rather, he was waiting for Ning Tiance, the prince consort of the great Zhou Empire's eldest princess. He was also the god of war in the hearts of all the soldiers of the great Zhou Empire. It was said that Ning Tiance was the #1 general of the great Zhou Empire. He had never been defeated in 10 years and was stationed in the most chaotic north of the great Zhou Empire. There was even a rumor that when 3 dynasties invaded the north, Ning Tiance went deep into the enemy's camp and took the heads of the generals of the 3 dynasties. He defeated the 3 armies and became the god of war. In that battle, he had suffered 137 wounds. At the northern border, the people and generals wept together. The god of war was the most important weapon of the great Zhou Empire. At that moment, Ning Tiance was like a god in the great Zhou Empire. Some people said that he obtained the celestial art by chance, and it was the celestial art of war. Some people said that the Ning family had a secret art that could turn stones into soldiers. Regardless, Ning Tiance's name as the god of war was deeply ingrained in the hearts of the people. However, no one expected that when he was at the peak of his fame, the imperial court would send down a decree to summon him back to the capital. Although he was married, he was cut off from his military career. It was sad and regrettable, but it was also his final destination. However, what Ling Xiao couldn't figure out was that Ning Tiance had millions of soldiers at that time, which was enough to contend against the imperial court. Because of his high achievements, his path was destined to decline. But why was Ning Tiance willing to let go of his dignity and be detained by others even though he knew it was a trap? Ling Xiao did not believe that a general who had killed countless people on the battlefield would not be able to see through the great Zhou Emperor's scheme. But he still came back. There must be a secret behind everything that was strange. Although Ling Xiao didn't know if War God Ning had returned to the imperial court, he didn't know if War God Ning had returned and slapped his face forcefully. However, it was clear that he was someone with a story. He was also someone who possessed great fortune. He was able to come and go as he pleased with the hundreds of thousands of soldiers of the 3 dynasties. If it was any other minor character, they would probably be shot with arrows. It was only when the sound of footsteps was heard from outside the cottage that the corners of Ling Xiao's mouth lifted into a smile. "Boss, give me another pot of hot wine." "All right, please wait a moment, young master." "Mister, you're here." "Same old?" Outside the cottage, a valiant figure suddenly walked in. He was dressed in white and had black hair. He was tall and slender. His face was fair and handsome. He didn't have the rough aura of a general of the imperial court. Instead, he had a scholarly temperament. At this moment, there were 2 guards in plain clothes following behind him. The aura around them was terrifying. They were actually 2 divine overlords. Rather than guards, it would be better to call them spies. From their eyes, Ling Xiao could feel a deep sense of vigilance and cautiousness. However, the middle-aged man in white didn't seem to care at all. He sat in another corner and sipped his wine. What he wanted was also a plate of beef and a pot of hot wine. He ate with relish. However, the bleakness between his brows didn't escape Ling Xiao's eyes. Interesting. Third-grade Divine Emperor, Dao Law of Yanbing, 4,000 points of fate. The smile on Ling Xiao's face suddenly became wider. The most mysterious thing was that Ning Tiance had a heavenly array Dao heart. This was even more terrifying than the Dao Law power in his body. As the saying goes, if there is an array in one's heart, all arrays will be broken. If there is an array in one's mind, all the enemies will be trapped. His aptitude was no different from those divine bodies. He was indeed a war god. Moreover, Ning Tiance was at most 40 years old. However, he had already entered the divine emperor realm. The destined one was indeed terrifying. There was no longer any movement in the cottage. Both of them had their own thoughts. They drank wine and ate meat, enjoying the rare silence. Until Ning Tiance put down the silver and walked out of the cottage, Ling Xiao didn't say a word to him. This was a battle saber that could help him kill all the enemies. Therefore, he couldn't be too hasty. From Ning Tiance's appearance, Ling Xiao could tell that he was Ning Er's father. But why did he abandon his own daughter so cruelly? This didn't seem to fit the model of the destined one. After all, it was the destined one. He must be righteous, upright, kind, benevolent, and righteous. Therefore, the problem should be with the Princess Royal of Great Zhou. Previously, when he searched Ning Er's divine soul, he found that the old woman was the wet nurse of the Princess Royal of Great Zhou. This relationship was comparable to that of a close relative. In other words, the old woman was the Princess Royal's confidant. Moreover, the Princess Royal gave the old woman a huge sum of money and asked her to find a place to live with Ning. However, she was never allowed to enter Great Zhou. Unexpectedly, the old woman's luck wasn't very good. She was robbed halfway through her journey and ended up in such a poor and destitute state. If it wasn't for Ning Er's luck, the old woman and her granddaughter would have died when they left. The old woman had thought of asking the Princess Royal for more money. However, she knew the Princess Royal's intention. It was already merciful for her to let Ning Er live. If their whereabouts were exposed again, she and Ning Er would die. Kinship was not worth mentioning in front of the Emperor's schemes. In fact, the old woman thought too simply. The reason why Ning Er didn't die wasn't because the Princess Royal was merciful. It was because she left herself a way out. Once her evil deeds were exposed one day, she could use it to threaten Ning Tiance and control him. Just like now. The corners of Ling Xiao's mouth curled up slightly as he walked out of the cottage. If he wanted Ning Tiance to surrender, it was not enough to expose the Princess Royal's scheme. After all, with Ning Tiance's mentality, how could he not know what Zhou Minxian was planning? Removing his military power, transferring him back to the capital, granting him wealth and splendor, it was all for him, the rumored immortal art of war. However, from what he saw today, he didn't have any immortal art. What he understood was the art of war. He could control soldiers and strengthen them. As for the heart of heavenly array, it was empty. It wasn't about strength, it was about scheming. Therefore, even an emperor god couldn't tell. As for how Ling Xiao could tell, damn. I think you are looking down on my system. The great Zhou dynasty's first princess, Zhou Minyao. I, Ling, despise people like you who scheme insidiously. So, I sentence you to be guilty and you should die. Ling Xiao walked out of the cottage. His face was covered by a veil. Though his face couldn't be seen clearly, he looked like an immortal. Chapter 360. In front of a majestic palace in the east of Yunfang City. This palace was called the Yunrua Palace. It was bestowed by the emperor of the great Zhou dynasty when Ning Tiance and Zhou Minmin got married. Rumor had it that the Princess Royal of the Great Zhou dynasty was severely injured when she was young. As a result, her heart was destroyed. Therefore, compared to the other ancient palaces in Yunfang City, this palace was much quieter. Of course, some said that although the Princess Royal and war god Ning were married, their married life was not harmonious. No one knew if it was because war god Ning's body was weak or if he was lacking in other aspects. Anyway, this majestic ancient palace was covered by a gloomy aura. "Who are you?" It was only when Ling Zhao's figure reached the entrance of the hall that two armored guards stopped him. "I came from the east and saw auspicious signs floating in this palace. However, above the auspicious signs, there are dark clouds. I want to see the owner of this palace and help her achieve Tao." Ling Zhao smiled faintly. His voice was low and hoarse. His immortal aura made him look otherworldly. In the end, no matter why Ning Tiance was forced to stay here, he must have some resentment after so many years. What he wanted to do was to stimulate his resentment and make him break off from the Great Zhou dynasty. Only then would he be able to benefit from it. As for Ning he had guessed what Zhou Minmin was planning. However, there were some things he needed to verify. When the couple turns against each other, he would succeed. A wandering Taoist? The two guards looked at each other with sarcasm in their eyes. "I'll give you 3 breaths. Get the hell out of here. Otherwise I'll kill you." Hearing this, Ling Zhao was not surprised at all. After all, the path to immortality was complicated and people's hearts were unpredictable. Most of the Taoists who entered the secular world claimed that they could predict heaven's will. However, how many of them were truly capable? Didn't they rely on their mouths? Humph! Ling Zhao frowned. His face was glowing. Although he did not emit any aura, a terrifying aura descended from the sky. The two guards' expressions changed instantly. What a joke! Although his cultivation was only at the divine general realm, his soul was already comparable to a god-emperor powerhouse. Moreover, with the soul-sucking ghost pearl and the ancient Pangu stone guarding his soul sea, his soul aura contained a supreme concept. God-emperor! Sure enough, when they felt the terrifying heavenly might that made their hearts tremble, the two guards almost knelt down on the spot. "Go and tell your master that I can cure her heart disease. If she misses today, everything will be for naught." Ling Zhao's voice had an unquestionable majesty. The two guards no longer dared to hesitate. One of them rushed madly into the hall. God-emperor powerhouses, whether it was in the eastern border or the western border, they were all people who stood at the pinnacle of heaven and earth. Even the great Zhou emperor had to treat him with respect. After all, who would dislike having too many experts under their command? Such a person would never use gold, silver, and spirit stones to trick the world for the sake of spiritual treasures. Therefore, what the Taoist priest said might be true. "Sir, the princess invites you in." Soon, when the armored warrior returned to the front of the hall, his face was filled with respect. Ling Zhao, on the other hand, didn't even spare him a glance as he walked into the hall. The aura of an expert was undeniable. "Ning Tiance, how many times have I told you? Ning Er's body is weak and she can't bear to see blood. How much blood do you have on your hands? Are you trying to harm my Ning Er?" Clap! Suddenly, a loud and clear clapping sound came from the distant main hall. It's been 10 years. I haven't seen Ning Er for 10 years. Can't I just look at her from afar?" Ning Tiance's voice was inexplicably low. As long as Ning Er's body is not well, don't even think about seeing her. Ning Tiance, I really don't understand. Since you love Ning Er so much, why don't you give the immortal art of war to father? Now that the great Zhou Empire is in turmoil and the border is in a state of emergency, do you really want to see the great Zhou Empire fall? How many times have I told you? I don't have any immortal art of war. Why don't you believe me? Fine. Think about it yourself. I think you're just thinking about the border and your murderous aura is still there. The imperial physician said that people like you are the easiest to scare. Ning. Get out of here. Don't hurt my daughter. Sigh, a long sigh that contained a myriad of bitterness. Then, Ning Tiance walked out of the hall and headed towards the back of the hall. However, the moment he turned around, he was suddenly stunned. At this moment, he saw Ling Xiao standing in the distance and looking at him with a faint smile. Although the latter's face was covered by the clouds and he couldn't see his face clearly, he felt that he was familiar. In the end, Ning Tiance didn't say anything and left. In the Rua Yunrua Palace, he was the master, but he was no different from a prisoner. However, he didn't blame Zhou Minyao, because he knew that his wife was forced to do this. As a member of the royal family, a woman's marriage was just a matter of interest. Moreover, Zhou Minxue's heart meridian was injured because of him. In this life, he had never betrayed the royal family, the people, or the generals. However, he had betrayed this beautiful woman. Therefore, he was willing to stay by her side and give up all his glory. Princess, Elder Immortal is here. The guard bowed but didn't enter the hall. Elder Immortal? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. Do you believe that I'll remove the clouds on my face and scare you to death? Come in. A weak female voice came from the hall. It seemed to be filled with sorrow. Ling Xiao smiled faintly and stepped into the hall. He saw a sickly and charming woman in a golden robe sitting quietly in the middle of the hall. Although there was not the slightest bit of aura being emitted from her body, she imperceptibly emitted the might of an emperor. She was a very ambitious woman. With just one look, Ling Xiao knew Zhou Minyao's temperament. Elder Immortal, are you from the Eastern Land? At this moment, she was also looking at Ling Xiao with interest. The Taoist rhyme in his white robe made him look like an immortal. Princess, you seem to have something on your mind? Ling Xiao nodded faintly. He suddenly stretched out his fingers and pinched them gently. Yes, I don't have much of a future. I should be a female emperor who serves the country wholeheartedly, but I don't have a good ending. Hearing Ling Xiao's words, Zhou Minyao's eyes flashed with surprise. However, she calmed down immediately. Haha, Elder Immortal, you must be joking. I'm just a woman with an incurable disease. How can I have the bearing of an emperor? Now, I only hope to live a stable life. It's my fortune to live a little longer. Princess, you're too pessimistic. Your children aren't with you, right? Ling Xiao suddenly smiled, but Zhou Minyao's eyes were instantly filled with killing intent. Elder Immortal, what do you mean? My daughter, Ning is in this palace. Could it be that you've made a mistake? I heard that the great Zhou dynasty has a precious treasure called the Emperor Vein Immortal Gold. It's an item that the Emperor of the great Zhou dynasty gave to you to accompany you. If you're willing to part with it, I can not only prolong your life, but also help you get the thing you want. Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. His tone was extremely calm. The best hunter had to pretend to be the prey. If one had no desires, it would be easy for others to have misgivings. As for the Emperor Vein Immortal Gold, he didn't care at all. What he cared about was the trust of the princess in front of him. Chapter 361. Emperor Vein Immortal Gold? Zhou Minrua frowned slightly, and the wariness in her eyes dissipated. What if this traveling Taoist priest was aloof and not greedy for anything? She would feel that there was a problem. After all, who wasn't greedy on the path of immortality? Why fight for Tao if one wasn't greedy? The Emperor Vein Immortal Gold was indeed a precious treasure of the great Zhou dynasty. It was formed from the remains of an ancient emperor. Why was the so-called ancient emperor so powerful? In the previous world, the main characters weren't humans, but the demonic beasts in the Great Swamp. The fate of the world was in the demonic beasts, not humans. Most of the spirit veins and precious lands were occupied by demonic beasts. Therefore, the cultivation of the human race wasn't as easy as it was now. If they weren't careful, they would become food for the demonic beasts. Those who could reach the Dark realm were people who had experienced life and death situations and had great fate. Unlike now, as long as your father was awesome, even if you used elixirs, you could create a few fake emperors. Of course, the immortal gold wasn't a secret in Yunfeng City. Therefore, there was nothing to be suspicious about this Taoist priest knowing about it. The immortal gold contained the essence of the ancient emperor and could protect her broken heart. If not, she would have died a long time ago. But this Taoist priest said that it could help her extend her life? I lack an ingredient for refining elixirs, and it's this immortal gold. Otherwise, do you think I would care about you, a mere immortal general? Ling Xiao shook his head and chuckled. Inadvertently, a wisp of Emperor's aura spread out, causing Zhou Minrua's expression to change. A god Tharch expert. There were many god thearchs in the great Zhou dynasty, but none of them were truly proficient in alchemy. But this traveling Taoist priest wanted to use her immortal gold to refine elixirs? You're quite ambitious. Are you trying to refine a 9th-grade elixir? Haha, so Immortal Senior is also proficient in alchemy? But what was Zhou Minrua thinking? Since she could plot against Ning Tiance, she wasn't a naive girl who could be easily deceived. She still smiled perfunctorily. This Taoist priest was indeed quite skilled. He could actually calculate that her children weren't around. Even in her Rua Yun palace, the only people who truly knew of this secret were her and her mother-in-law. As for whether he could have met Ning or Haha, if he did, wouldn't it be more convenient for him to threaten her? I know a little. Ling Xiao shook his head and chuckled. With a flick of his finger, a wisp of golden emperor flame bloomed. Terrifying heat instantly engulfed the entire ancient palace. Even the ground that was paved with green stones began to crack, as if it could not withstand the ferocious might of the flames. Zhou Minxua's expression froze the moment the flames appeared. Although she was only a god general, she was the princess of a dynasty after all. Her knowledge was far beyond what ordinary people could compare to. That wisp of flame contained a wisp of the power of heaven and earth. This was the heaven and earth spirit fire. This person had a heaven and earth spiritual flame. At this moment, Zhou Minhua's heart trembled. It was common knowledge that any expert who could control such a divine object was a famous supreme existence in the world. Judging from the indifference in this person's tone, it was as if he was not afraid of exposing such a divine item. Obviously, he had enough confidence. That's right. With the divine fire around him and the power of Tao laws faintly mixed in, how many people in the world could be a match for such an emperor-god expert? Suddenly, Zhou Min was enlightened. This expert might be the benefactor who could change her fate. Moreover, this was the great Zhou Empire. Even if someone wanted to plot against her, they would not dare to be so brazen. Although this person's face was covered, it was probably to keep a low profile. In front of such a supreme expert, the dignity of a dynasty was not worth mentioning. If he wanted a piece of land, many people would be willing to give it to him. May I know your name, Immortal Elder? Zhou Minhua suddenly stood up and bowed to Ling Xiao. I am Ling Yuzi. Ling Xiao said indifferently, but the corners of his mouth curled into a subtle smile. As expected, in this world, people would always be in awe of mysterious and powerful things. If he had revealed the heaven and earth spiritual flame, perhaps Zhou Yunhua would have some greed. But step by step, he made her fearful and suspicious. She did not dare to act rashly. Immortal Elder, you said that you can help me extend my life and help me get the thing I want. Is that true? Give me the Emperor Gold Pellet and you will know whether it is true or not. Ling Xiao did not answer. His attitude was even a little tough. This, Zhou Yunhua hesitated for a moment. Finally, she took out a golden spiritual flower from her chest and handed it to Ling Xiao respectfully. 10 years. In these 10 years, she had used countless methods to coerce, bribe, and be indifferent. But she still could not get the immortal art of war from Ning Tian's. If this Taoist in front of her could really help her get the immortal art, even if she died, it would be worth it. Born in the royal family, her destiny was destined from the moment she was born. Especially as a woman, even if she once wanted to fight for the throne, but the 10 years of scheming had already exhausted her physically and mentally. If not, she was unwilling, perhaps she would have given up long ago. Sometimes, Zhou Minhua would also think about the meaning of her life being controlled by others. But after all, she could not start all over again. Immortal Elder, now can you tell me how to get the thing I want? From the beginning to the end, Zhou Minhua did not say what she wanted. But how could the quarrel between her and Ning Tian's escape Ling Zhao's divine sense? Moreover, the old woman had some vague memories in her divine sense. Everything matched up. Obviously, Zhou Minhua was just a pawn. In other words, she was a spy placed by Emperor Zhou beside Ning Tian's. Her purpose was, of course, the immortal art of war that did not exist in Ning Tian's possession. Perhaps Ning Tian's had already guessed it. But he still stayed by the side of the great Zhou princess. There must be some melodramatic, emotional drama. The god of war returned to the great Zhou dynasty because he felt guilty. Princess, in your eyes, is your husband more important or that thing more important? Of course, if you get that thing, not only will you be able to command the world, but you will also be able to prolong your life. Think carefully and tell me. Ling Zhao's tone was slightly dignified. The meaning of his words was self-evident. He believed that Zhou Minhua would make the right decision. This was destined from the moment she abandoned her daughter. How could an ambitious woman be willing to lose her youth in the past 10 years? Of course, even if Zhou Minhua had some hesitation in the past 10 years, it was meaningless to Ling Zhao. Of course, there must be A and B in the plan. After all, Zhou Minhua had already entered the game today. As for why Ning Tian's was willing to take off his armor for her, it was probably because of the injury on the princess's chest. It was an old trick. There was nothing new, but it was indeed touching. Especially the true feelings when they were young. It was easy to remember. Unfortunately, there was no true feelings in the imperial family. It was just one thing after another. Things remained the same but people changed. Of course, that thing is more important. Zhou Minhua did not even hesitate and said directly. But somehow, there was a trace of pain in her heart. Ning Tian's, don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for having too many military achievements and threatening the rule of the Zhou family. I didn't kill Ning Heir because I left you a bloodline. In this case, you should thank me. Chapter 362. Haha, I'm curious. Ning Tian's is the war god of the north. He has millions of soldiers under his command. Why would he be willing to enter the capital and marry you? Ling Zhao raised his eyebrows and looked at Zhou Minhua calmly. He now understood the plot of the princess of the great Zhou dynasty. He also guessed why Ning Er was stranded outside. However, this was the only thing he was really curious about. After all, Ning Tian's title as the war god was only known in the west border 20 years ago. During this period, he never left the north of the great Zhou dynasty. How could he have a relationship with Zhou Minhua? Of course, it was just pure curiosity. This point did not affect his plan at all. It seems that the immortal elder can't predict everything. Zhou Minhua smiled bitterly. She looked sad. Yes, the immortal elder couldn't predict it. How could she know that her unintentional action back then would make her the most important chess piece in the eyes of the emperor? When she was 16 years old, she left the palace for a tour. Ning Tian's, who was not famous yet, was with her that day. In the end, they were assassinated by the enemy. Their guards were all killed. That young man was the only one who protected her with his saber. But in the end, he was alone. Zhou Minhua's heart was pierced by an arrow. Although the arrow missed, it hurt her heart meridian. Ning Tian's body was covered with blood. He carried her to the mountainous area and almost died. They were saved only when the strong cultivators from the palace arrived and killed the enemy. But Ning Tiance was guilty of neglecting his duty. Zhou Minxue cried and begged the emperor to spare his life. He was spared from death, but he couldn't escape punishment. Ning Tiance, who was 20 years old, was banished out of the palace and went to the most desolate and chaotic north of the great Zhou dynasty. He became a soldier. Perhaps this was the so-called fate of the heavens. Although he left the imperial capital, Ning Tiance's nature was completely stimulated. The bloody battles not only awakened his Taoist heart, but he also comprehended the way of deceit when he became a general. The way of deceit was in war. It was also from that day that Ning Tiance's path as the war god officially started. But in a dynasty, the emperor was the most respected. How could they tolerate having a god in the court? In the end, Emperor Zhou's gaze landed on the eldest princess who had saved Ning Tiance's life back then. Due to the damage to her heart meridian, Zhou Minxue's originally smooth path to immortality had become complicated. Even the engagement that had already been set had been cancelled by someone else. The Zhou emperor decreed that Ning Tiance should return to the imperial court and marry the eldest princess. As for the god of war who was loyal to protect the country, in the end, because of the guilt in his heart, he abandoned the million soldiers who worshipped him like a god at the border. It was said that on that day, snow fell in the northern region, and heaven and earth wept. Countless soldiers held long swords in their hands and swore to wait for the return of the general. How could Ning Tiance not see through Emperor Zhou's concerns? He only left a sentence, "I'll only let the princess down in this life." In his eyes, Min Hua, who had cried and begged for mercy for him, was probably the only obsession in his heart. Ning Tiance came back, but Zhou Minxue was no longer a teenager. She shouldered a mission and carried the hopes of the Zhou clan. Obtaining the celestial arts from Ning Tiance, the great Zhou dynasty's 1,000-year hegemony, getting pregnant and giving birth to a daughter was for the sake of family affection. The disappearance of the Tibetan girl was for the sake of threatening and forcing. She even knew that Ning Tiance loved her deeply, but she made things difficult for him again and again in order to force him to tell her the secret in his heart. However, all of them failed. Sometimes, Zhou Minxue would even wonder if he really didn't have any immortal spells. However, he remained undefeated for 10 years, commanded troops like a god, and gathered tens of thousands of battle formations in one chest. How could he explain this? Gossip is a fearful thing, and gossip is a fearful thing. If I could predict everything, this world would destroy me. Since the princess has made her choice, I'll show you the way. I've seen Ning Tiance before, and he doesn't have any immortal spells. Ling Zhao's calm words instantly caused Zhou Minxue's face to turn sluggish. What? Immortal Senior, are you making fun of me? No, he's gifted and has a Taoist heart. He's a rare talent in commanding troops. His heart is called the Taoist heart of heavenly formation. He can break a battle formation and turn it into a battle formation. If the princess can dig it out and change it into your own body, not only will your lifespan be prolonged, but you may also become a supreme master. Ling Xiao gave a profound smile, but Zhou Minmin's eyes once again surged with shock. Change the heart? Immortal Senior, are you serious? Whether it's true or not, you've already calculated everything. What's the harm in trying? Moreover, do you think if Ning Tiance knows that you abandoned your daughter, he'll still live here peacefully? In these 10 years, he has already gotten rid of the obsession in his heart. The only thing that he can't let go of is perhaps his family. Moreover, I just calculated that Ning Tiance will definitely make a move in the next few days. This pill is called the 7 Turns Cloud Heart Pill. It can protect your life when you change your heart. Consider it my reward for your Emperor gene. After saying that, Ling Xiao waved his hand. A golden elixir flashed and fell into Zhou Minxue's hand. The former didn't hesitate anymore. He turned around and walked out of the palace. This is a 6th grade elixir. Zhou Minxue was stunned. Her eyes were filled with fear. A 6th grade elixir was a great fortune even in the Shijiang. Sure enough, this immortal senior's attainment in alchemy was amazing. But the Taoist heart of heavenly formation? I can become a supreme master by digging it out? That's right. I'm Ning Tian's wife. As long as he dies, I can become the new god of war in the northern region. By then, the crisis of the Zhou clan will be resolved, and I can shift all the blame to. But if what Ling Yuzi said is false and I kill Ning Tian's rashly, won't it arouse the suspicion of my father? Once I'm no longer useful, my father will definitely find a scapegoat to appease the soldiers at the border. What should I do? Outside Ruo Yun Palace, Ling Xiao was walking on the street calmly. The chess piece has entered the game, but there's still a slight difference. With Zhou Minxue's temperament, she might not dare to put all her eggs in one basket. But from the quarrel between Ning Tian's and her, it was obvious that he missed his daughter dearly. As long as someone could give him a slight push and let him see the sinister intentions of Zhou Minxue and Zhou Minxue, this peerless god of war would definitely fall into his hands. At that time, with Ning in his hands, he would definitely be loyal to him. A god of war with 4,000 providence points who has reached the martial emperor realm. Wouldn't the Shijiang be at his fingertips? Ling Tian and the others' providence points were very high. They even had room for growth. But their cultivations were still low, so they couldn't be of much use. But Ning Tian's was different. If he surrendered, he would immediately become the toughest spear in Ling Zhao's hands. Haha. The imperial family really has no feelings. Compared to them, am I too merciful? Moreover, the struggle in Zhou Minxue's eyes might become Ling Xiao again. Wait, no. Persuade Ning Tian's to lead the army to rebel. Wonderful. As for the 6th grade elixir, it was indeed a heavenly fortune. Haha. But it could change the heart of a chicken. It was just an elixir that contained supreme spiritual energy refined by the moon of Xianyuan. It was a divine item to improve one's cultivation, but changing the heart to save one's life was pure nonsense. Moreover, this elixir could only be used if the heart was changed. Zhou Minxue, did she have the chance? When the Qianquan bag was searched, it would be returned to Ling Zhao's hands. Give her a fortune, give her hope. You can only gain something if you lose something. But Ling Xiao, I don't want to lose anything at all. On the second day, Ling Xiao appeared in the Jiangyu Inn on time as usual. There was still a pot of hot wine and a plate of beef. Not long after, Ning Tian's also appeared and sat in the same place. The wine here was not mellow, but it was strong enough to comfort his nostalgia from the border. Yesterday, I came from the north and talked with the disabled general. Why is the important weapon of the dynasty still in the imperial palace? The cold city has been destroyed and strong enemies have emerged. Is your heart empty when the people are slaughtered? Ling Xiao seemed to be a little drunk. His eyes were glistening with tears. He gently lifted the pot of wine and poured it on the ground. This cup is a toast to the dead soldiers. Suddenly, he stood up and glared at Ning Tian's, who was frowning and looking at him. He sneered, "General, is the wine warm?" Chapter 363. Who are you? Ning Tian's looked at the drunk young man in front of him and calmed down. What he had experienced was not something an ordinary person could imagine. Although the deeper meaning behind Ling Zhao's words had indeed disturbed his state of mind. But he had not asked about the war in the north for many years. Or rather, he was powerless to do so. Why was he in the imperial capital? If he returned to the north, his wife and son would be used as a bargaining chip by Emperor Zhou. Ning Er's body was extremely weak since birth. If he was wronged again, he would feel uneasy. A mere scholar traveling all the way here. Ling Xiao raised his head and drank a mouthful of wine. You came from the north? Yes. Ling Xiao looked indifferent. He did not care about the look the owner gave him. There was an unwritten rule in the imperial capital. One could not mention the North in front of the god of war. This young man was only 17 or 18 years old. Obviously, he was inexperienced. But if he angered Ning Shen, Ning Tiance picked up the wine pot and took a big gulp. Ling Xiao sneered. General, you are in such a good mood. 100,000 soldiers in the north died in 10 years. But you are enjoying yourself here. What are you trying to say? Since it is a trap, why are you so obsessed with it? Why didn't the north send more soldiers in 10 years? Why would the great Zhou dynasty rather be slaughtered than send a general? Is it worth it to lose 1 million soldiers who respect you for a person who schemed against you? Ling Zhao's lips moved slightly, but he did not make a sound. However, the two divine overlords standing outside the door were already looking at him warily. Phew! Tell me your origin. Otherwise, you will not be able to walk out of this hut. Is my origin important? Maybe you can go back and see your daughter. Don't you feel strange after not seeing her for 10 years? Ling Xiao sneered. Ning Tiance's face suddenly turned pale. Young man, since you came from the north, I will spare your life today. Get lost. A wisp of Emperor's aura quietly spread out. It was as if a sea of blood was rolling, and 10,000 horses were neighing in unison. However, Ling Xiao didn't seem to notice it. He looked at Ning Tiance calmly. As expected, he wanted to protect his daughter. When Ning was mentioned, this great Zhou war god nearly collapsed. It seems that the general also has his suspicions. After 10 years of life and death, it seems that the general has not only let down the generals of the northern region, but also failed to protect the loved ones that you wanted to protect. Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. He drank the last mouthful of hot wine before turning around and leaving in a carefree manner. What do you know? However, when Ling Xiao walked to Ning Tiance's side, his voice was extremely cold. I've seen an old granny called Han Yu. She told me that the one in Ruiyun Palace isn't the real Ning. Ling Xiao stopped and turned to look at Ning Tiance. At this time, the latter's face was already blank. Then, he stood up and reached out to grab Ling Xiao's clothes. Where did you see her? Tell me. Otherwise, I'll make you wish you were dead. Since the general doesn't believe me, why do you ask me? Why don't you ask your first wife, who has been scheming against you for 10 years? This is ridiculous. Ling Zhao's lips curled into a sinister smile. A wisp of Emperor's aura spread out from his body and instantly cleared up Ning Tiance's eyes. God Emperor? He took a deep breath and stared coldly at Ling Xiao. No matter what your purpose is, I don't believe that Min Rual would lie to me. If I see you in the imperial capital again, I'll kill you. A self-deceiving Ning Tiance. He is no longer the respected war god in the northern region. Ridiculous. Ling Xiao reached out to grab Ning Tiance's wrist and pulled his hand away. Then, he turned around and left. If Ning Tiance didn't believe him, he wouldn't let him go. In other words, he didn't want to fall out with this strange young man who knew about Ning Er's whereabouts before he had the confidence to keep Ling Xiao here. Han Yu. Ordinary people wouldn't know this name at all. And this princess's wet nurse had indeed disappeared from Ruiyun Palace for 10 years. Was it a coincidence? Or was Min Rual lying to him? From the beginning, Ning Tiance knew that Zhou Min Rual wanted the immortal's art of war from him. But he really didn't have it. But why would she attack Ning Er? Also, if Ning Er wasn't in the palace, where was she? Ning Tiance couldn't figure it out, but he gradually felt that something was wrong. He originally thought that as long as he treated her sincerely, the three of them would live a simple and peaceful life one day. But now it seemed that he was really indulging in his fantasy. As for the answer, he really should ask Zhou Min Ruo about it. Oh, by the way, take this voice transmission talisman. When you find the answer, you might want to talk to me. Just as Ling Xiao was about to walk out of the cottage, he stopped again. Then, he took out a bright golden talisman and threw it on the ground. Stop. At this moment, the two divine overlords guarding outside the door suddenly stepped forward and blocked Ling Xiao's way. Tell me, who are you? You're just a divine overlord, how dare you stop me? Ling Xiao coldly shouted as the soul light in his eyes suddenly became dazzling. A wild force descended from the sky and almost smashed the two divine overlords to the ground. General Ning, I'll wait for you. After saying that, Ling Xiao stopped hesitating and walked towards the end of the old street. Emperor's son-in-law, did that young man come from the north? The two divine overlords' faces turned pale. They didn't expect that a young man who looked like he was only 16 or 17 years old was an emperor god. More importantly, he came from the north. That's right. A cold light flashed in Ning Tian's eyes. Before the two deity overlords could react, he reached out his hands and grabbed their neck. Ning Tians, are you trying to rebel? Crack. Monstrous spiritual light flickered and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Ning Tians raised his head and looked at the young man who was disappearing at the end of the old street. Finally, a serious expression appeared on his face. You let down the millions of soldiers in the north, and you failed to protect your loved ones. Zhou Minyao, if you really hurt my daughter, I'll take back everything that belongs to me today. Plop. Ning Tians released his hands and the two divine overlords' bodies fell to the ground with a dull thud. He hadn't felt the pleasure of killing for a long time. The final destination was the battlefield. He had no regrets even if he died in the battlefield. After Ning Tians walked out of the cottage and walked towards Ruoyun Palace, the owner of Jiangyuan dragged the two corpses on the ground and walked towards the back of the inn. From the beginning to the end, he didn't show any emotion on his face. It was as if the scene of killing didn't scare him at all. At this moment, there were even tears in his eyes. My general, it's been 10 years. You've finally found your courage. No matter who that young man in white was, he was grateful to him. That person didn't leave any money. Damn. How dare an emperor god freeload? Shameless. Chapter 364. On the ancient street, Ling Xiao stood on top of a building and looked at the solitary figure. The corner of his mouth faintly carried a trace of evil. Obviously, Ning Tians believed his words. Otherwise, he would not have killed the two divine overlord guards. A good show was about to begin. However, Ning Tians might not be able to kill Zhou Minxue with his strength. After all, Ling Xiao could sense a terrifying aura in the depths of Ruoyunrua Palace. However, the more she acted like this, the more Ning Tians understood the Princess Royal's sinister intentions. She dug out his heart and abandoned his son. What a vicious woman. Thinking about it, I, Ling Xiao, am a hero who exterminates evil. In front of the main hall of Ruoyunrua Palace, Ning Tians took a deep breath and walked in. At this moment, Zhou Minxue was sitting in the hall, holding an ancient book and reading it quietly. In front of her, green smoke was rising from the incense burner. It was peaceful and peaceful. Minxue, get out. I don't want to see you these few days. Zhou Minxue frowned and did not raise her head. At this moment, her heart was filled with complex emotions. Should she kill Ning Tians or not? Minxue, I want to see Ning. Ning Tians walked to the front of Zhou Minxue. His eyes were also filled with complicated feelings. 20 years ago, if it was not for this woman, he would have been killed by Emperor Zhou. 10 years ago, if it was not for this woman, he might not have made up his mind to abandon the millions of soldiers who risked their lives to return to the imperial court. Now, if it was not for this woman, he would not have to suffer such humiliation and watch the soldiers of the northern region get slaughtered in the imperial capital. You. Zhou Minxue raised her hand instinctively and slapped Ning Tian's face. However, this time, Ning Tians, who was always gentle and weak in front of her, suddenly raised his hand and held her delicate hand. Take me to see Ning. Ning Tians had only seen his daughter once since she was born. That tiny, white baby melted his heart that was as hard as iron. But never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that the moment she was born would become the only memory he had of his daughter. 10 years of lovesickness was a torture that Ning Tiance had never experienced in his 10 years of military service. Originally, he thought that Ning was just weak and was being nurtured in the depths of the main hall. His hands were indeed stained with the blood of thousands of living beings. The murderous aura was too evil and would pollute the pure white soul. But never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that this was actually a lie. All of a sudden, Ning Tiance's last bit of guilt towards Zhou Minshao disappeared. Love. Ning Tiance, how dare you! A trace of astonishment flashed across Zhou Minshua's pale face. However, the astonishment quickly turned into coldness. As expected, Elder Immortal didn't lie to me. Ning Tiance would definitely rebel soon. As expected of someone who understood the heavenly fate, he could even calculate this. Since that's the case, I have no reason to hesitate. Ning Tiance, you asked for it. If it weren't for me, do you think you would still be standing here alive? I just want to see Ning. It's been 10 years. Even if it's just a glance, it's fine. A trace of pain flashed across Ning Tiance's eyes. If there was no war in the northern region and Ning was safe, even if Zhou Minshao wanted his life, he wouldn't hesitate. But now, his general was slaughtered and his daughter's whereabouts were unknown. The hatred in his heart could no longer be suppressed. I've said that you can't see her. You'll scare her. Zhou Minshao sneered and looked at Ning Tiance coldly. Don't you know how much blood your hands are stained with? Do you think your hands are fit to hug my daughter? I won't hug her. I just want to see her. Princess Royal, please? The excuse that had always worked was now ineffective. Zhou Minrua frowned slightly. Could it be that Ning Tiance had noticed it? Or that Elder Immortal, right? It must be so. Ning Tiance must have overheard her conversation with Elder Immortal just now. Fine. Since you want to see Ning, I'll take you there. In the end, Zhou Minshua only nodded. She took the lead and walked toward the rear palace. Did I blame her wrongly? Although Ning Tiance looked calm, there was an inexplicable expectation in his heart. Or rather, he still loved her. Sometimes, a glance at some people could mean a lifetime. Until the two of them walked to the deepest part of Rua Yunrua Palace, in a secluded courtyard, Zhou Minxiao's face showed a cold smile. We're here. Ning is inside. Isn't this where Granny Shang lives? Ning Tiance frowned slightly and hesitated. If there was anyone in Rua Yunrua Palace that he was wary of, it would only be Granny Shang Xiang. She was the servant of Zhou Minxiao's mother. When the two of them got married, she was given to Rua Yunrua Palace to protect Zhou Minxiao. Of course, her real purpose was to prevent Ning Tiance from escaping the imperial capital. Fourth-grade Divine Emperor, the top powerhouse in the great Zhou Empire. But, if they were to fight, Ning Tiance was not afraid of her. Ning has been cultivating with Granny Shang. Zhou Minshua snorted coldly, while Ning Tiance walked into the courtyard impatiently. Just as he appeared in the courtyard, an ancient formation spread out above his head and completely cut off the connection between this place and the outside world. In the void, Ling Zhao's figure was hidden. Looking at the golden spiritual screen below, the corners of his mouth suddenly curled up into a smile. The show was about to start. Minshao, what's the meaning of this? Ning Tiance's eyes turned cold. Nothing. Don't you want to see Ning? Zhou Minshao walked to the house in the courtyard and said softly, Granny Shang, he's here. With a buzzing sound, the door opened, and an old woman wearing a palace robe led a young girl in red out of the room. Ning Tiance, what are you doing here? The old lady's face was full of wrinkles and her silver hair was tied into a bun. Her dark palace robe fluttered in the wind and her eyes were cold. Previously, Zhou Minshao had told her about what Ling Xiao said. Therefore, she had made arrangements. Since Ning Tiance was here, she could roughly guess the reason why Princess Royal lured Ning Tiance here. She was the princess's mother's servant and she only cared about the princess. Since Zhou Minshao had made up her mind, she had nothing to worry about. Killing a god of war was indeed risky. However, if the princess could get something out of it, it was worth the risk. At this moment, Ning Tiance did not look at Shang Xiang but looked at the young lady beside him excitedly. But, for some reason, the young lady's eyes were filled with panic and there was no joy. Strangely, Ning Tiance felt that this was not Ning. Although they had not seen each other for 10 years, the blood connection between father and daughter should not be so weak. Could it be, Ning Tiance, you've seen your daughter? Should we talk about the immortal art of war? Just as Ning Tiance was pondering, Zhou Minxue's face suddenly flashed with coldness. Chapter 365. Min, I've told you many times that I don't have any immortal's art of war. Ning Tiance clenched his fist, and the power of Tao gradually surrounded him. Zhou Minmin shook her head and said with a smile, I know, but you have the heavenly array Tao heart. It's said that this Tao heart can transform arrays and break arrays. It's a great fortune for a commander. Min, what do you want to do? Ning Tiance narrowed his eyes. No one in the world knew about his Tao heart. How did Zhou Minmin know about it? Ning Tiance, you owe me a life. Why don't you return it to me today? Since they had fallen out, Zhou Minmin didn't hide anything anymore. As long as, if she could get the heavenly array Tao heart, not only would she not have to worry about her life, but she could also conquer the world. She had thought about changing her Tao heart before, but it was too risky. If she wasn't careful, she would die on the spot. Zhou Minmin didn't want to try it until the last moment. However, it was different now. The 6th grade elixir given to her by the old immortal was a supreme elixir that could shake the entire Shijiang. Old immortal Minmin, thank you. What did you say? Suddenly, Ning Tiance felt a little sad. Even though he knew what Zhou Minmin was planning. But when she really said that, Ning Tiance still felt depressed. 10 years. He used 10 years to prove to the state of Zhou that he didn't have any intention of rebelling. 10 years. He worked hard for her without complaint. Although he was repaying her kindness, he also wanted to change Zhou Minmin's mind. However, he didn't get what he wanted. If it had been in the past, he would have swung his saber and returned Zhou Minmin's life to her. However, Ning Er's whereabouts were unknown. He couldn't accept it. The destined person is resentful. Congratulations to the host for plundering 300 luck points and 3,000 villain points. Ning where are you? Ning Tiance's tone was calm, and his aura became stronger. There seemed to be a Tao sound in the world. Even the ancient array that covered the small courtyard started to tremble. Ling Xiao stood in the air, coldly watching the scene below him. It's not time yet. It's not hateful or cruel enough. Only when Ning Tiance was completely disappointed could he understand the value of true love. Ning aren't they right in front of you? Ning Tiance, do you want to do it yourself, or do you need my help? Zhou Minxue's jade-like hand gently pinched the girl's pale face. The reason why she sent Ning away and found a girl who was not related to her by blood to impersonate her was because she had thought of the situation today. Zhou Minxue was indeed vicious and paranoid, but she had not reached the extent of being deranged. Although, when she gave birth to Ning it was not because of love, but because she wanted to gain Ning Tiance's trust. However, it was not impossible for Zhou Minmin to kill her own flesh and blood with her own hand. It was just that she could not guarantee that she would be able to do it. Therefore, she didn't want to take any risks. That was why she used this trick of exchanging a leopard cat for a princess the moment she was born. Zhou Minhua, what are you trying to do? There was fear in Ning Tiance's eyes, but Zhou Minxue shook her head. You don't believe that she is your daughter, do you? Then what are you worried about? As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly grabbed the girl's arm and gently pulled. Crack! Ah! A painful scream instantly resounded in the small courtyard. However, the sound did not spread too far due to the cover of the ancient array. Ning Tiance stared blankly at the girl who was shaking her arm with a painful expression. The next moment, his eyes suddenly turned blood red. Zhou Minhua! You are simply deranged. Ha ha ha. Ning Tiance, do you really think that I love you? This B** starred is just a means for me to control you. Since you said that she is not Ning, then I will kill her. Zhou Minhua gently stroked the girl's hair. Her eyes were filled with hatred. She naturally knew Ning Tiance's strength. With Granny Shang's cultivation, she might not be able to suppress him. Once today's matter was exposed, Great Zhou would be in chaos. But with Ning as her trump card, Ning Tiance could not be presumptuous at all. Even if he did not believe that this girl was Ning how would he dare to take the risk? Stop! Ning Tiance fiercely gritted his teeth, but in the end, he suddenly sighed. Perhaps Ning was lucky that she was not in the palace. With such a cruel and merciless mother, how could she grow up happily? Promise me that you will let her go. Of course, Ning is also my daughter. I swear with my Tao heart that if you obediently stop, I will give her a lifetime of glory. Zhou Minhua smiled and nodded, moving her hand away from Ning head. Finally, Ning Tiance stopped talking and slowly closed his eyes. Haha, Ning Tiance, don't worry. After you die, I will bury you with the imperial rights of Great Zhou. After finishing her words, an ancient sword suddenly appeared in Zhou Minhua's hand, and she fiercely stabbed it towards Ning Tiance's forehead. Generals of the northern region, I have let you down in this life. However, just when the ancient sword in Zhou Minhua's hand was 3 feet away from Ning Tiance's forehead, an ear-piercing hum suddenly came from above the ancient array. Then, a white-robed figure floated down and stood in front of Ning Tiance. Heaven and earth became silent. Even Shang Xiang raised her head in a daze at this moment and glanced at the ancient array above. How did this young man break the array? The unparalleled Tao law suddenly shone brightly. Ling Xiao only stretched out 2 fingers and gently pinched the tip of the sword. Then, Zhou Minhua was stunned to see that the divine sword in her hand was broken inch by inch. Pucci! Her delicate body trembled, and her eyes were filled with fear. Zhou Minhua's figure instantly flew back and stood beside Shang Xiang, looking at the young man in white with fear. She did not know why, but she felt that this young man was familiar. Who are you? Why are you here? Zhou Minhua and Ning Tiance opened their mouths at the same time, but Ling Xiao just shook his head and smiled. General, do you have a choice now? Ning Tiance's eyes flashed with a hint of struggle. He was not sure whether that girl was Ning or not. If he acted rashly, Ning Tiance, you really have a helper. Why, don't you want your daughter's life? Zhou Minhua was also curious about where this young man came from. However, it was obvious that he knew Ning Tiance. General? Could he be Ning Tiance's former subordinate? Daughter? Eldest princess, look at what this is. Ling Xiao smiled playfully. Suddenly, an item appeared in his hand. It was the only stone pendant that old woman Han Yu had. This pendant looked ordinary, but it was a low-grade divine artifact. An old woman with no cultivation base did not sell it even when she was on the verge of death. It could be seen that this pendant must have some other uses. It was a keepsake, or rather, a symbol of Ning identity. Zhou Minhua's expression became dull almost instantly. Who are you? So, you abandoned your daughter and schemed against your husband. How can there be such a vicious woman like you in this world? Ling Xiao glanced at Shang Xiang indifferently. She was a 4th-grade divine emperor, but she did not have much time left. She was like a candle in the wind and was not a threat. At this moment, Ning Tiance saw the fear on Zhou Minhua's face. The last trace of worry in his heart finally disappeared. Zhou Minhua! How could you be so vicious? Chapter 366. Humph! Ning Tiance, this is the rustling clouds palace. Do you think you and this young man can escape from me? Stop struggling. Since we are husband and wife, I will give you a quick death. Zhou Minxue sighed softly, and a sweet smile suddenly appeared on her face. Come out. In the house behind him, a figure shrouded in a black robe suddenly walked out slowly. His aura had also reached the Emperor realm, at the level of a first-stage God-Emperor. He hid in the dark and hid his aura. Hence, Ning Tiance did not notice him. However, no matter how powerful he was, he could not escape from Ling Zhao's divine soul. He was just a first-grade Emperor God. However, he still had to put on a show. Otherwise, how could he make Ning Tiance submit to him? You are the former commander of the Imperial Army, Zhang Yu. Aren't you dead? Ning Tiance frowned and his eyes dimmed. At this moment, he could feel that the Lingxiao realm was actually only at the Divine General realm. It was most likely that the Lingxiao realm had used some kind of method to release the Emperor's might. How could a 17 or 18-year-old young man reach the Emperor God realm? Thank you, Princess, for saving my life, Zhang Yu said coldly and stood behind Zhou Minxue quietly. Ning Tiance calmed down after hearing that. Young master, I have a request. General, you want me to take care of Ning Er? Ling Xiao nodded. Ning Er cannot live without his father. The North region cannot live without the god of war. I am not a saint, but I don't want to see the world in misery. Even if I die with you today, I will not complain. Young master is righteous, but, General, don't worry. As you can see, I am proficient in some unorthodox skills. Can you fight against a fourth-grade Emperor God? Yes. Good. Today, I will fight to the death with you, General. Ling Xiao smiled and held the evil ancient sword in his hand. The sword was unsheathed and shone brightly. Around his body, there was a faint multicolored light flickering. He really did have a sense of transcendence. Ning Tiance was shocked. He didn't say anything for a long time. There were tears in his eyes. If I were alive today, I would like to be sworn brothers with you, sir. I don't ask to live together, but to die together. What the F***ck? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows and pondered. In this life, I will live as long as the heavens and earth. Are you praying for your own blessings? Big brother! Brother Xiao! Kill! In the end, Ning Tiance took the lead and rushed towards Shangxiang. The terrifying momentum of the Tao laws began to surge like a tidal wave. The entire formation emitted a heart-palpitating buzzing sound. Ning Tiance held a green saber horizontally in his hand. There were dragon inscriptions on the saber, and it contained unparalleled power. As the saber slashed out, it was as if it carried the power of 1,000 soldiers. It transformed into 10,000 horses out of thin air, galloping and neighing. The world was dark. It was like a bloody battlefield, and there was a terrifying bloody aura that spread for hundreds of miles. Shang Xiang's old face trembled, and he couldn't care less about the girl next to him. Spiritual light began to shoot into the sky from his body, and it turned into a giant palm that went toward Ning Tiance. Boom! The two forces collided in the sky. The glaring golden formation above everyone's head dimmed for a moment. However, what frightened Shang Xiang and Zhou Minmin was that Ning Tiance's figure only paused for a moment before he completely shattered the heaven-ripping spirit palm. His eyes were filled with an indomitable sharpness, as expected of the god of war of the north. Once he made a move, nothing could stop him. As expected of the Tao law of Yanbing. One man and one saber had the power of 1,000,000 iron soldiers, and could kill both immortals and demons. Princess, be careful! Shang Xiang's eyes trembled, and a tinge of fear appeared in her heart. In the end, she still underestimated the 100 battles Emperor God. Although Ning Tiance was only a third-grade god, The combat power that exploded out made her, a fourth-grade god emperor, feel terrified. Humph. Zhang Yu, do it. Quickly finish off that young man. Zhou Minmin snorted and her face was cold. Although she always knew that Ning Tiance was strong, she didn't expect him to be this strong. Granny Shang was her biggest trump card. Once she died, she would completely lose today's battle. Luckily, previously, she owed Zhang Yu a favor, and he was considered her confidant. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to kill Ning Tiance today. How could a young man with a few tricks be a match for Zhang Yu? When the time comes, as long as she killed him, Zhang Yu and Granny Shang would join hands, and Ning Tiance wouldn't be able to escape. Yes, Princess. Zhang Yu bowed slightly and lifted his head to look at Ling Xiao, and a tinge of viciousness appeared on his face. With a spear in hand, he moved like a dragon. Zhang Yu's figure suddenly disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was already 10 feet away from Ling Xiao. The black spear in his hand contained a terrifying momentum, and the space collapsed, and there were traces of wind following it. At this moment, Ling Xiao didn't seem to be able to react in time. He stood quietly on the spot, and there was even a hint of a smile in his eyes. Humph, a young man is indeed not worth mentioning. Zhang Yu can kill him with a single spear. Zhou Minmin shook her head and smiled. How could a fool who didn't even know how to dodge be able to withstand the full blow of an emperor god? She turned her head and looked into the distance, only to see Ning Tiance and Granny Shang fighting in the sky. As the ancient saber slashed down, the spiritual seal shattered, and the small courtyard was instantly turned into ruins. However, although Shang Xiang was a fourth-stage Emperor Realm expert, she was obviously at a disadvantage. As the saber in Ning Tiance's hand kept slashing down, Shang Xiang's face gradually turned pale, and even the spiritual light around her showed signs of dissipating. "Granny, hold on for a while more." Zhou Minmin gritted her teeth. However, at this moment, a strange sound of collision suddenly came from the direction in front of her. Clang. Zhou Minrua frowned slightly and turned her head in puzzlement. She saw that the young man in front of Zhang Yu suddenly turned into an armored warrior? That brilliant golden radiance almost blinded Zhou Minchua's eyes. However, why did his aura completely disappear? No, this is a dead thing. Could it be a puppet? Zhou Minmin's beautiful eyes slightly narrowed, and she looked at the young man in white who walked out from the side in surprise. She suddenly felt a chill in her heart. It can't be, he can't be going to attack me, right? Ling Xiao stood beside Jinan, and his face was still calm. However, deep in his eyes there was a flash of cold light. Of course, he would not attack Zhou Minmin. After all, this kind of hatred still needed Ning Tiance to fill it up. In this way, he would completely go against the great Zhou Empire, and there would be no trace of luck left. Moreover, if it was according to a normal plot, a woman like Zhou Minmin, who was in the royal family and her fate was controlled by someone else, would definitely have a lot of emotions when she died. Only when a person is about to die would they put down all their pretense and concerns. The war god of the north loved powerful people. Moreover, Ning Tiance did not have the temperament of a boorish man. Instead, he was more like a handsome scholar. Ling Xiao did not believe that Zhou Minmin did not have any feelings for him in the past 10 years. If she could say something flirtatious before she died, for Ning Tiance, it must be a psychological disaster. At that time, the royal family of the great Zhou Empire would be destroyed. Of course, if she did not say it, haha. Good person, love to help others, Xiao. He would also help her. Chapter 367. A Puppet. Zhang Yu's eyes narrowed as he looked at the golden-armored figure in front of him in surprise. Suddenly, he felt a chill rising from the soles of his feet. Puppets did not have intelligence and only had one method of attack. But at the same time, they did not feel pain or fatigue. They fought with their lives on the line. Zhang Yu did not know how strong the golden puppet was, but his spear did not break through its defense? Hiss! It felt like he would not be able to live past this chapter. My friend, your spear doesn't seem hard enough. Ling Xiao stood beside the golden puppet, his eyes filled with coldness. Although the golden-armored puppet only had the battle strength of a godly monarch, it could fight against a godly emperor. Especially now that it was holding the cloudy millet immortal sex heritage Tao artifact, the purple gold divine hammer. That's right, it was the one that the black demonic puppet was holding. Of course, the stronger one deserved to have a numinous treasure. You don't know what's good for you. Zhang Yu snorted and retreated with his spear. But at that moment, the golden puppet suddenly took a step forward. The purple gold hammer in its hand fell like a mountain, smashing toward Zhang Yu's head. Boom! Under the hammer, heaven and earth collapsed. The void seemed to tremble as a pitch-black hole appeared. Zhang Yu narrowed his eyes. It was too late for him to dodge, so he could only hold his spear horizontally and take it head-on. Poochie! However, he had underestimated the puppet's strength. At the moment of collision, Zhang Yu felt the blood in his body churning. He spat out a mouthful of blood 100 feet away. However, before he could react, the puppet fighter lifted the hammer and smashed it down again. Damn it! Zhang Yu's face turned pale. Hundreds of thoughts ran through his mind. Finally, he looked at Ling Xiao. Since it was a puppet, it had to be controlled. As long as he killed the young man, the puppet would collapse. With that thought, Zhang Yu turned his back to Ling Xiao. The instant the godly hammer smashed down, blood spurted out from his mouth. However, he borrowed the huge force and flew towards Ling Xiao at a speed that could be described as terrifying. Haha, borrowing strength to kill. I, Zhang Yu, am indeed a genius of the immortal path. I'm afraid no one would think of such a method. Zhang Yu somersaulted in the air, facing Ling Xiao. The black spear in his hand thrust out like a furious dragon, arriving before Ling Xiao in the blink of an eye. Clang! However, just as the corners of his mouth curled up and his eyes were filled with killing intent, he saw a black battle shadow appear in front of the young man. The sound of metal colliding could be heard. Zhang Yu's spear was unable to break through the puppet fighter's defense. Gulp! In front of Ling Xiao, the black demon war puppet looked a little strange. Its body was covered in a black armor that contained a faint Taoist rhyme. Taking a closer look, this puppet was actually wearing a Tao artifact? Putting Tao armor on the puppet? Suddenly, Zhang Yu felt that his values had been overturned. Ling Xiao only sneered and waved his hand. Two puppet fighters rushed over at the same time. A hammer and a halberd descended from the sky, enveloping Zhang Yu. The black demon war puppet only had the combat strength of a divine general. However, after being modified by Ling Xiao, although its offensive power was not strong, its defensive power was terrifying. The space rippled like waves. The two emotionless killing machines, one on the left and one on the right, hammered Zhang Yu and forced him to retreat. Ling Xiao raised his head and glanced at Ning Tiance, who had the upper hand. Suddenly, the corners of his mouth curled up into an evil smile. It was not difficult for him to kill a first-grade divine emperor. He could even kill Zhang Yu with a wave of his hand if he summoned Hua Heng and Xingxian. However, how could he move Ning Tiance if he did that? Of course, it was not easy to win people's hearts. He must bleed, get hurt and say dirty words. Die, you thief! Ling Xiao shouted angrily and rushed forward with his sword. As for Zhang Yu, who was trapped by the two puppet fighters, a gleam of joy flashed across his eyes. Wonderful! I was worried about how to escape and kill you, but you delivered yourself to me. When Ling Xiao was above his head, Zhang Yu gritted his teeth and a determined look flashed across his face. Then, in front of Ling Xiao's surprised eyes, he gave up resisting and exposed his body to the two puppet fighters. Then, he rushed toward Ling Xiao with a long spear in his hand. So ruthless? Just how great is the hatred between us that you want to kill me without hesitation? However, Ling Xiao crooked his mouth and released his aura. Before Zhang Yu could get close to him, there seemed to be a pair of wings behind him. Then, Zhang Yu was stunned when he saw the young man suddenly vomiting blood and flying backward. Pucci! The glaring bloodstains dyed the front of his white robes red. Even his complexion had inexplicably turned pale at this moment. However, when Ning Tian saw this scene, his face instantly turned cold. Even his attacks became more ruthless. You're worthy of being an Emperor God expert. You're really terrifying. Ling Xiao covered his chest with one hand and shouted coldly when he landed on the ground. Until then, Zhang Yu was still standing in the air with a dull face. What the f***ck? Did I hit him just now? Could it be that this Emperor's peerless aura had intimidated his heart? Otherwise, why did he vomit blood more than me? However, Zhang Yu couldn't figure out the reason. Two shadows came from above his head and covered him completely. Pucci! A hammer and a halberd smashed him down from the sky. Boom! The whole courtyard was filled with smoke and dust. Zhang Yu's figure was smashed into the ground and disappeared. Seeing this, Ling Xiao's eyes narrowed. He took a step forward and disappeared instantly. Don't die. Hold on for a while longer. In the darkness, Zhang Yu was lying on the ground, paralyzed. All the bones in his body were smashed by the puppet fighters. Even the places where the hammer fell were badly mangled. It was a miserable sight. Originally, he wanted to risk his life to kill Ling Xiao. In this way, the crisis would be solved. However, he didn't expect that the young man would be pushed back by his aura. His plan was shattered. It turned out that being too strong was not necessarily a good thing sometimes. Oh, fortunately, I'm not dead. Just when Zhang Yu was feeling annoyed, he heard the sound of wind above his head. Then, Ling Xiao's figure descended from the sky and directly stomped on his head, crushing it. Buzz! At the same time, he felt his divine soul tremble. When he opened his eyes again, he was in a dark and strange space. Min! Run! Go to the palace and find the Emperor! In the courtyard, Shang Xiang fell from the sky. Her face was pale and bitter. Blood was gushing out from her chest like a fountain. Zhou Minmin was shocked and her delicate body trembled slightly. She wanted to run away. She felt that the young man's divine sense was firmly locked on her. If she turned around and ran away, she would be killed immediately. Zhou Minmin, no one can save you today. Ning Tian's body was also covered with wounds. His aura was faintly weakened. However, the killing intent in his eyes was not reduced at all. Instead, it became colder. Chapter 368. 1. Underground, Ling Xiao opened his eyes and took a step forward. He instantly appeared beside Ning Tian's. Big brother! Brother Xiao, your injury. Ning Tian's eyes narrowed, especially when he noticed that Ling Xiao's aura was extremely weak. Presumably, Zhang Yu's spear strike must have caused him to suffer an extremely serious injury. How familiar this scene was. When he was in the northern region, didn't his countless soldiers and brothers also follow him through fire and water like this without any regrets? Don't worry, big brother. This woman. Min, leave quickly. I'll stop them for a moment. Shang Xiang gritted her teeth and stood in front of Zhou Minmin. She looked like she was ready to die. What a loyal servant. Ling Xiao sighed. Especially when he saw Shang Xiang slowly losing her vitality, he felt sorry for her. Damn. Such a good tonic was wasted just like that. However, he didn't dare to be too obvious with Ning Tian's beside him. Granny Zhou Minmin's eyes were filled with tears. However, when she turned around and was about to leave, the two war puppets suddenly blocked her way. You overestimate yourself. Ning Tian's took a deep breath and took a step forward. He swung his saber and aimed for Shang Xiang's head. Pucci! There was no obstruction, nor was there the slightest bit of surprise. How could an old emperor god expert block a heaven's mandate battle immortal when she was severely injured? Blood spurted into the sky and the head rolled down. A trace of gloominess and coldness suddenly flashed through Zhou Minruo's eyes. After that, she actually captured the young girl who had been scared silly. Ning Tiance, do you know who she is? Zhou Minmin, don't struggle. I've told you that no one can save you today. Ning Tiance's expression was cold and his tone was filled with endless killing intent. You abandoned my daughter and killed my soldiers in the northern region. Now you want to dig out my Taoist heart. If Zhou Minmin didn't die, he wouldn't be able to vent his hatred. Deep love leads to deep hatred. This saying was reasonable. 10 years of sincerity, in the end it was just a complete scam? Ridiculous. Ridiculous. He Ning Tiance, her name is Huang Yi, Huang He's only daughter. Do you still want to kill me now? Zhou Minxue sneered. There was even a hint of complacency in her eyes. She had also planned for this for a long time and had set up countless traps, even though she still didn't know how she lost. But as long as she didn't die, she still had a chance. What? Ning Tiance's face changed and his body trembled slightly. At this time, Ling Xiao frowned and looked at Zhou Minxue meaningfully. This woman was really not simple. Layers upon layers of arrangements had Ning Tiance in a tight grip. Needless to say, Ling Xiao could guess. This girl was most likely the daughter of one of Ning Tiance's soldiers. As for this soldier, he had most likely died in battle. Zhou Minyao raised her by her side in the name of taking care of her children, so no one would doubt her intentions. Wonderful! This was really the most vicious woman's heart. From the beginning to the end, Ling Zhao's opponents were all people of destiny who thought they had powerful trump cards. However, he had always been the one controlling others. He didn't expect Zhou Minxue, the villain, to give him some small surprises. Sure enough, only villains could use their brains in any place. The people of destiny only needed to follow the destiny and say something like, "I'm going against the destiny," and then hit their faces. Zhou Minxue, you're really vicious. As expected, Ning Tiance hesitated again. For a righteous god of war like him, loyalty and righteousness were the most important thing. Huang He was once a general under his command. He died in battle to protect the country. At that time, he was already trapped in the imperial capital, but he still heard about the heroic deeds of this general. He defended the city to death and didn't fall. Unexpectedly, Zhou Minxue actually, "Let me go and I won't kill her. Otherwise, if your old subordinates know about this." Zhou Minxue sneered and her hand was glowing. "You go." In the end, Ning Tiance looked up and sighed. He slowly closed his eyes as if he was sad. Hearing this, Zhou Minxue's eyes were filled with joy. However, before she turned around and left, the girl in front of her suddenly struggled and bit off her own tongue. At this moment, the soul light in Ling Zhao's eyes flashed and dimmed in an instant. "Oh no! She's going to kill herself!" Ling Xiao exclaimed. Ning Tiance also instinctively looked at Zhou Minxue. In the next moment, the spiritual light around him soared into the sky. Zhou Minxue, die! At this moment, his rationality had been covered by anger. The battle sword in his hand was glowing. He didn't give Zhou Minxue any chance to refute. His figure flashed and stabbed the sword into the heart of the great Zhou princess. Puchi! Zhou Minxue's beautiful eyes widened and blood flowed down from the corner of her mouth. In the end, she just smiled bitterly and raised her hand to touch Ning Tiance's face. "It's coming!" The corners of Ling Zhao's mouth curled up. Just now, he was still thinking about how to silently control Zhou Minpio's divine sense. He didn't expect this woman to play the role herself. As for why he didn't take the opportunity to control Zhou Minxue with the power of the soul but controlled the girl instead, a 10-year-old child with no cultivation at all. Naturally, there was no such thing as attacking her soul. See. Ling Xiao could make her soul scatter with just a thought. However, Zhou Minxue was a divine general and the princess of the great Zhou dynasty. Who knew if there were any treasures guarding her soul sea? Once there was an accident, wouldn't Ling Xiao's plan be for nothing? Villains usually died because they were arrogant, talkative, and unscrupulous. I have to be careful when doing things. I can only act cool when I'm sure of it. Otherwise, I'll end up as a stepping stone in an ordinary plot. I'm sorry. Tears suddenly fell from Zhou Minxue's eyes. Her originally gloomy and arrogant face gradually revealed a touch of gentleness and tiredness. You brought this upon yourself. Ning Tiance pulled out his sword and looked coldly at the beautiful figure that was slowly falling to the ground. A trace of sadness flashed through his eyes. I brought this upon myself. If I wasn't a member of the royal family, why would I make things difficult for my husband and plot against the god of war that I admire the most? Zhou Minxue shook her head blankly. Death aura spread around her. In her life, she probably only lived for herself before she was 10 years old. After that, she was always on tenterhooks. Her identity as the princess of the great Zhou dynasty would definitely become a threat in the eyes of some people. Later on, she carried the mission of the Zhou family and became a spy beside Ning Tiance. If there was a next life, she really wanted to be an ordinary woman. At least, she lived for herself. Tiance, I never asked you for anything. Now can I ask you for something? Zhou Minxue's face became paler and paler. She gradually lost the strength to speak. What is it? How could Ning Tiance not know who was the one who plotted against him? Zhou Minxue was ruthless, but she was just a pawn at best. The one who really wanted his immortal technique must be the one on the throne of the great Zhou dynasty. Ning is not dead. I've asked an immortal to tell me that she's still alive. Promise me. Find her. Leave this troublesome place. Also, don't tell her that her mother is a ruthless woman, okay? I'm begging you. Zhou Minxue's body trembled slightly. Before her death, she finally let go of all her schemes and returned to her identity as a mother. She didn't care about the immortal technique or the heavenly array Dao heart anymore. If she could start everything over again, she would rather accompany Ning Tiance and her daughter and live a peaceful life. But in the end, she didn't wait for Ning Tiance's reply. The last drop of tear fell from the corner of her eyes. Her life quietly ended. Chapter 369. Min, Ning Tiance closed his eyes in despair and clenched his fists. After all, he loved the Princess Royal. Otherwise, he wouldn't have returned to the imperial court and be restrained by others. At first, he thought his feelings were mixed with gratitude. He couldn't repay the favor of saving his life. However, it was only when he saw Zhou Minhua take her last breath that he realized he was wrong. The person he loved was Zhou Minhua, not his savior. Brother Ling Xiao walked to Zhou Minxue's side and leaned over to caress her eyes, making her close them. Brother Xiao, thanks to you this time. Otherwise, I might have died here. Ning Tiance squeezed out a smile. Brother, sister-in-law is so pitiful. Her life is controlled by others. I can see that she loves you and Ning. Maybe she sent Ning out of the imperial city to protect her. Ling Xiao sighed as if he was moved by Zhou Minmin's last words. But there was no fluctuation in his eyes. Protect Ning? Ning Tiance's expression changed, and he understood it immediately. That's right. Her life was controlled by Emperor Zhou. If Ning fell into the hands of the Zhou family, suddenly, Ning Tiance's eyes were filled with tears. No matter how vicious this woman was on the surface, at the end of the day she was still kind inside. Emperor Zhou. Zhou family. This hatred was absolutely irreconcilable. Feeling the coldness from Ning Tiance's body, Ling Zhao's lips curled into a smile. Brother, sister-in-law can't die in vain. Phew. I'll go to the imperial palace now and ask for an explanation from Emperor Zhou. Ning Tiance took a deep breath and was about to leave. Brother, you're foolishly loyal. Ling Zhao's face was inexplicably gloomy, and killing intent circulated in his eyes. Not to mention that Emperor Zhou wanted to kill you. Now that Zhou Minxue died at your hands, entering the palace now is no different from seeking death. It doesn't matter if you die. But what about the soldiers in the northern region? What about Ning? Brother, since Emperor Zhou wants to kill you, why don't you rebel? Avenge sister-in-law and give the people a peaceful world. What? Rebel? But… Ning Tiance's lips quivered as he looked at Ling Xiao in shock. If it was 10 years ago, he would have had some confidence to occupy a city and become the emperor, fighting for the throne with Emperor Zhou. But now, how could he fight against the great Zhou dynasty alone? Big brother, we'll talk about this later. Anyway, now let's settle sister-in-law's matter first. Don't reveal your thoughts for now. We'll meet at the Jiangyu Inn tomorrow. Ling Xiao smiled faintly. Now Ning Tiance trusted him. As long as Ning was sent to him, this person of destiny would most likely submit completely. At that time, whether the great Zhou dynasty is in chaos or not, won't it be up to me to decide? Solve? How to solve it? Once Zhou Minyao dies, Emperor Zhou will definitely know that it was me who did it. No, big brother. We only need to do this. Ling Xiao sneered and whispered something in Ning Tiance's ear. No, brother Xiao. How can I let you take this risk? There are many experts in the great Zhou dynasty. If Minyao didn't like peace, I'm afraid the Ruoyun Palace would be a tiger's den. Moreover, there will definitely be experts watching this place. You? Ning Tiance wanted to say something but stopped. What he wanted to say was, you're just a divine general. Once you attract the attention of the experts of the imperial family, you'll definitely die. Big brother, you don't know that I once promised a prince of the great Xia dynasty to avenge him. This is an opportunity for you to lead the army again. Ling Xiao looked at the sky with vicissitudes of life in his eyes. A prince of the great Xia dynasty? Lead the army again? Brother Xiao, you. Big brother. There's no time to explain. This formation may not be able to stop the high-grade divine emperors from prying. You and the eldest princess have been missing for too long. You'll definitely attract attention. Don't worry. Have you forgotten that I'm best at unorthodox methods? I have a spiritual treasure. Even the divine emperors can't do anything to me. Just do as I say. Ling Xiao grinned and put away the two puppet fighters. Before Ning Tiance could refuse, he suddenly thought of something and bent down to take out a Qiankuan bag from Zhou Minxue's arms. I heard that the eldest princess has a divine flower. It's the most precious treasure of the great Zhou dynasty. Big brother, you should know. Yes. Brother Xiao, you're really meticulous. I'm ashamed of myself. Ning Tiance nodded. Kill and steal. Since he dared to kill in the imperial capital, he must be stealing the most precious treasure. As for the treasure that Zhou Minxue possessed, it was naturally the Emperor Vane immortal gold. Okay, let's start. Big brother, let's meet tomorrow and talk about it in detail. After saying that, Ling Xiao finally stopped hesitating. He flew into the sky and flew away. There was a monstrous demonic aura surging around his body. Is it so real? Little brother Zhao's unorthodox techniques are really mixed up. If he didn't know him before, he would have thought that he was a real demon. Their plan was simple. Ling Xiao pretended to be a demon while he pretended to be sad. All the blame would be put on Ling Xiao while he, Ning Tiance, only needed to wait for Ling Zhao's next plan. Minyao! Ning Tiance suddenly roared. His voice contained spiritual power and instantly resounded throughout the entire imperial capital. Demon! I'll kill you! Instantly, the aura of countless experts shot up to the sky in the imperial capital. There were even a few emperor gods that appeared above the Ruoyun Palace. At this moment, Ning Tiance was holding Zhou Minyao in his arms. His eyes were red and his aura was weak. In the horizon, a terrifying aura that was emitting demonic intent was escaping. It was actually an Emperor God expert. Demon? A white-haired, beardless, and red-faced elder narrowed his eyes and chased after Ling Xiao. At this moment, he didn't suspect that Ning Tiance was acting. After all, everyone knew that the war god of Great Zhou had feelings for the princess. But what kind of demon dared to create trouble in the imperial capital of Great Zhou? Moreover, he dared to kill the princess of Great Zhou. Inexplicably, the elder suddenly sensed a dangerous aura. In the sky above Yunfang City, Ling Xiao was the first to dash out. Behind him, 2 emperors and 4 kings were chasing after him. The person leading them was actually a 5th-grade emperor god. As expected of the Shijiang, experts are everywhere. However, at this moment, Ling Xiao didn't look panicked at all. Instead, there was a faint smile on his face. The figure that was dashing out gradually slowed down. The more powerful the person was, the more realistic the show would be. Stop right there! The 5th-grade Emperor God suddenly launched an attack. It turned into a giant palm that covered the sky and fell on Ling Xiao's head. The latter instantly let out a roar and threw out an ancient seal. It emitted a monstrous golden light that seemed to contain the power of an emperor. However, the power was somewhat weak. The spiritual palm instantly destroyed the ancient seal and shattered the void within 10,000 miles. Ling Xiao spat out blood and the demonic aura around him swept across the sky. He shouted an ancient evil curse. "Mali Mali, open sesame!" Buzz. Thunderclouds suddenly gathered in the sky. Behind Ling Xiao's back, a pair of lightning wings appeared out of thin air, and his figure almost instantly disappeared before everyone's eyes. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.